Falls. And Ailish is looking forward to attending St. Paul High School next year. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. On behalf of the members of council, we thank you for your rendition of O Canada. Thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to call on Councillor Carrio to lead us in prayer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Would you join with me in reciting the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
The first order of business this evening, councillors, is the adoption of the council minutes of February 11th, 2008. Motion by Councillor Carrio. Yes?
Your Worship, I have a conflict. I was not here, as you're aware. I was ill at that meeting, but two items on that list. PD 2008-14, the item that had to do with Club Italia.
Yes?
And the development charges one. The whatever was to do with development charges. Conflict.
So noted. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, the discussion with respect to development charges declare a continuing conflict.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we're still dealing with the minutes. Councillor Inoue.
Actually, I'm just declaring the same conflict previous in camera in regards to development charges.
Yes. Councillor Whitty.
I realize we're dealing with the minutes from last meeting, but just to be on the record as well, for this meeting, I have the same conflicts regarding the in-camera matter. My spouse's employer is involved. For the minutes of last meeting, the item on page 15 under new business, there was also something in the motion that didn't get recorded, and it was that information on the condition of the collection and costs that will be incurred be provided to council.
Okay.
Okay, so that could be added in.
Okay, so noted.
move the minutes, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Carrier, seconded by Councillor Maves. Any discussion? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. At this time, members of council will ask for any disclosures of a pecuniary interest by any members of council. We have noted, yes, Councillor Carrier?
There was a meeting prior tonight. It was an in-camera meeting.
Yes.
I'm assuming it had something to do with development charges.
Right.
And declaring a conflict on that, Your Worship.
Thank you. And so note Councillor Thompson, and along with Councillor Wing and Councillor Inoue, is that correct?
Yes.
Are there any others? Okay. Thank you very much. At this time, members of council, we're going to adjourn the regular council meeting to begin a Corporate Services Committee agenda meeting. I'm going to ask the Chair of Corporate Services, Councilor Peter Enzo, to take this chair, and we'll just exchange seats for the duration of that meeting. Nameplate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the corporate services agenda, we have that we're going to deal with the municipal utility budget first, and the operations budget, and the capital budget, and then any miscellaneous items. But before we begin tonight's discussion, I'd like to have a slight change in the agenda. The capital budget that everyone has in front of them proposes that the city spend a significant amount of tax dollars over the next 5 years. And although the capital budget of 2009 and further is not set in stone until council actually passes them in their respective years, I believe that we as a council should be having a strategic planning session around how much debt we believe the city should be incurring as a maximum, so that we don't send the wrong message to the residents and businesses about the future of the city's financial position. Ultimately, then, the decisions that we make at our special meeting of council with respect to a ceiling on debt will precipitate further discussion around which capital projects we believe should move forward in the future. And on a personal note, I guess I know that difficult decisions will need to be made, but I believe that we should all be updated on the impact that debenturing will have on future operating budgets. We should see a forecast over the next 5 years before we decide on our future capital budgets. So, therefore, what I'd like to ask council to do tonight is to deal strictly with the 2008 capital budget and to defer the discussions around future years for the capital budget to a special meeting of council. And I'd ask Mr. McDonald, actually, if he could comment on when that meeting could take place.
Mr. Chair, at council's discretion, we've had a quick discussion on this, and realistically, we have some difficulty arranging a time with all council in March, but we would attempt to do it in March. More than likely, it would be the end of March or early April that we would do that. But to your point, if we only approve the 08 budget tonight, I think that would allow us to begin the work that's necessary on the key projects that we currently have on the table. And as you point out, the 09 and beyond, which is just really a suggested proposal anyway based on the discussions we've had, so I would be very supportive for that direction.
Okay. Do you have any comments of council? Councilor Ainoni.
Can you just clarify that? Are we discussing this entire capital budget tonight? Because I'm not comfortable passing just 08 tonight. I think, and just as I wasn't comfortable passing the operations budget without going through all three and dealing with all of them at the same time. Quite frankly, and I've told you downstairs, this budget sucks. And not only that, it does not reflect the strategic planning of the council, nor does it reflect the directions given to staff by this council. And I mean, I think we should be, and just so that we don't have staff come back later and say, well, you sent it back, but you didn't tell us what you wanted pulled out, you didn't tell us the direction that you wanted to go. We spent a great deal of time going through this budget, line by line, and I think if we're sending staff back with direction, we should be allowed to tell them what it is we want to come out and where our problems are. Are you saying that discussion is still allowed to be had tonight?
I don't really mind having discussion. I wouldn't want to have too long of a discussion because, again, I'd like to set that aside for a special meeting. But I don't really believe that we should be passing the capital budget tonight for anywhere past 08.
Well, I wasn't going to vote for this capital budget anyway because I think it's so terrible. It's $90 million of new debt in this budget. We might as well bankrupt the residents now as this budget sits. But I think cutting off discussion tonight because you don't want extended discussion because we're going to strategic planning a strategic planning meeting, which was what this budget was supposed to be. All we're dealing with tonight is capital. So I hope you're not cutting off open discussion.
No, I never said I would cut off discussion.
Okay.
You're more than free to, I guess, display your points in open public.
So we can now talk, so are you saying right now we can start on what we want, what I would think should come out of the budget? Like, we can go through now what we don't like and what we do like?
In the capital budget?
Yes.
If you'd like to do that, you can.
Yeah, it's not just 08.
Yes, I'd like to have a strategic planning session with regards to a ceiling on what council believes our maximum debt should be, okay, over the course of the next 5 years. That then will precipitate discussion on what projects we believe should move forward once we have a ceiling.
I agree with you. It's a great idea. I thought we did that in an election where most of our senior staff read our election flyers. I thought we were pretty clear on where that was supposed to go. Not to mention we have close to $5 million in some budgets we've already said we don't want in this budget. So are you taking...
By all means, I mean, if you want to make some points on what you believe should be in the operating budget and should not be in the operating budget, then put them on the floor.
Okay. Can I do it by motion?
By motion?
Yeah.
In the
Pull
sense
things out of
of...
this budget that I believe will come out tonight. Because you shouldn't be hindering what we do and what we don't do tonight. I'm confused.
Yeah, and I don't really want to make decisions on anything past 08 tonight. I'd like to defer that to a special meeting. Until we sit down as a council and basically get an update on where our debenturing is leading us in terms of affecting our operating budget, I think that we should hold off passing or negating any future capital budgets.
Okay. So I guess I'll start then because I have the floor.
Go ahead.
Because, quite frankly, I thought that's what tonight's meeting was about. I see that it's not going to be very positive in regards to what staff has in here, but I can see us slashing a whole lot of $90 million worth of debt. I'm going to start at the back, no shock to anybody. So we'll go to the back to tab 8. Tab 8 has $4.2 million on page 169, so I'm asking for some clarification from staff. On page 168, out of our capital 2009, 10, 11, and 12, there's $4.8 million in capital for the downtown. I'm going to be making a motion to remove that. But then on 169, downtown revitalization, downtown CIP phase 1, there's $4.2 million. Are either of these numbers just the incentive programs? So if Mr. McDonald could answer that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
In fact, it's all the incentive programs. We didn't include the infrastructure works that we originally talked about. There's no money in 08, as you pointed out. The money in 09 and beyond is really intended to be there, depending on council's final decision on the CIP incentive programs. That's exactly why it's in.
Okay, through you to Mr. McDonald. Mr. McDonald, this is listed as capital. And then, are you talking $9 million, or are you talking 4.8 and then 4.2?
The background sheet on 169 is just a detail of 168.
Okay, so you're talking a potential $668,193 in 09 for the incentive programs. That's not for... Excuse me?
I didn't hear the question.
Is that for the incentive programs, or are you looking at capital projects like road repair, parking structure?
No, this actually, when it was put in, was meant for the incentive program. But again, we're looking for direction from council. We clearly had the direction that we weren't doing any infrastructure works. So this is really an anticipation of what council might decide on the incentives for the CIP. So at this point, it's just an estimate, but it's focused around where the incentives and the infrastructure, and we're just waiting direction from council.
Are your estimates based on requests that have already came in?
No, they're not.
So we don't need necessarily $4.2 million over
That's
4 years?
You may need, $500,000, or based on the proposal you received a while ago from the downtown, you might need $3 million a year. So
Well, we already mixed that, so...
it's just an estimate, and until council has the proposal from downtown and makes a final decision on the incentives, if you can do anything, it's just an estimate. It's just a guess.
I thought we had, when we nixed it when they were here the last time, that we had no intention of spending $3 million a year in the downtown. So I would say our motion of up to $12 million over 20 years does not say $4.8 million in 3 years in the budget. As a matter of fact, I think when we made that motion, there were a couple councillors on that side who said, if we give any. I don't know how clearer we can be.
If Mr. Chair, I could help with that. You
Sure.
could simply make a motion to increase it, decrease it, or take it out. That would be very clear. But again, as mentioned, this is a proposed capital budget, and it really is an estimate of what's going to happen over the next 5 years. It's not in stone, as the chairman just pointed out. And so, as you indicated, it would be good to give staff direction. So whatever direction the council wishes to do, we make the adjustments accordingly.
Thank you. To this point?
Okay, I have other people that actually want to speak. I have other people that are asking to speak as well to that point. Yes, and I do, but I have other people that are asking to speak to the point. You do still have the floor.
Thank you. And then I want to go to tab 2. But we're not having this discussion? I'm sorry?
Councilor Iononi, I think what should happen, if we're going to get into discussion then, is we do have some presentations by staff to be made on the budget. We should have the presentations first and then be asking questions after.
Then I'll relinquish the floor to have the questions as soon as they're done.
Okay. And I would ask staff actually to bring the capital budget presentation on 2008 forward, please.
Mr. Chair, to be honest, I'm a little confused on the whole issue at this point. We did have a proposal ready to deal with the whole 5-year capital budget. If the focus is going to be redirected into the 08 with just questions on the balance, we would readjust accordingly. So I'm not sure how you'd like us to move forward.
We do have a presentation on the 2008 capital budget.
Actually, what we did is we prepared a bit of an overview that includes the whole 5 years. We could refocus it on the 08 if that's what you prefer us to do.
Perhaps I can ask what council's wishes are. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I thought it would be in order if we follow the agenda that we have. And I appreciate your comments as you opened the meeting with regard to an opportunity for all of us to have a chance to debate the capital budget. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that we should allot some time in the future to allow us to do that. If it's just the capital budget that you wish us to deal with, we could do that or even expand upon that. But I think it would be in order tonight that we would follow the agenda that we have so that we do have people. And I'd like to hear what our CAO has to say with respect to some comments on some other aspects of the budget.
That's fine. Okay, Councilor Thompson, I'm sorry to cut you off if you'd like to speak.
No, I agree that we should be following the agenda, but when we got into starting at the back of the capital budget and talking about the downtown, I think that, in 2008, we're talking about $26,000, which is not significant. And I think that we have to have a full debate and discussion with the downtown to know where we're going with respect to all of this, because really it's all up in the air right now. We're talking about incentives for downtown. I think that that's one thing. If we're talking about capital expenditures for other things, such as parking ramps and roads and other, I think that's a totally different discussion altogether. So, we got $26,000 in 2008. It's premature, in my opinion, unless we have a full debate. And I think we could spend an entire evening just on the downtown issue with the downtown people here to determine where we're going with that. I'd like to have that opportunity at some time, and I think it's premature to try to. Well, it's not going to affect the budget this year anyway, other than the small amount that's in there. So I think that's another meeting that we have to have that dialogue and discussion.
Okay, under the agenda then we have the municipal utility budget first. So I would ask staff, whoever's going to make that presentation.
We have a presentation on each of the budgets, and Mr. Burden will take us through the utility budget to begin the discussion.
Chair, we just have a few comments to make, and we do have a slide presentation. There should be hard copies as well for the council members. We also wanted to alert you to the fact that late Friday we updated several of some important papers, one of which was the municipal utilities budget. You should have also received the updated package tonight. The error that we discovered was, although the column headings were correct, the actual numbers were from previous years. And we apologize for that confusion, especially if you studied the numbers prior to Friday. You probably were wondering, these look very familiar from previous years. Another issue that we came across was the bylaw, the proposed Schedule A. That's the rates and charges. There is a handout tonight. Another mistake that we made, and again, we apologize for this, it would almost make sense to pay after the due date, because the incorrect schedule had lower rates after the due date instead of before the due date. So again, we apologize for some of those very obvious errors. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the utility budget. We're talking about impacts on water, proposed water rates. We're talking about impacts on sewer, proposed sewer rates. And then finally, the water and sewer rate review. There were two reports written with regards to the budget. One was dated February the 11th, and that is included in your council agenda package. That has a lot more of the detail in word form. A second report, more as a recap, is also in the agenda. That's F 2008-10. Tonight, we're really asking that you would consider in passing the 2008 municipal utility budget. That means approval of the 2008 water and sewer rates as per the amended Schedule A. That would also mean amending the existing bylaw, and really all we're doing is just changing the schedules, the rates. Nothing within the actual bylaw is being changed except for the schedule of rates. And then finally, we would like you to accept the notion that while we are still doing a rate structure review, by approving the rates tonight under the current rate structure, we would revisit rate structure within a month's time, and then, as necessary, make the appropriate changes to the rates, carry on. There are some reasons for doing that. Tonight, I'd like to first focus on our notes from the overhead. So first off, what is the utility budget? Well, for many of us around the council, we already know that just means the water and sewer budget. The actual municipal utility budget got its start some time back in 1999. That's when we first referred to the water and sewer funds as a municipal utility. In 2004, the water and sanitary sewer services were actually separated into separate funds, but we still continued to look at water and sewer as a combined municipal utility. The utility budget must be self-sustaining, and perhaps, Dean, if you could just change the slide there. You'll notice that revenues must cover expenses. We try not to incur a profit, and we certainly try not to incur a deficit. These are estimates. And throughout the year and over the years, we have had both deficits and profits. There is no tax subsidy. In other words, none of the property taxes are allowed to subsidize either the water distribution system or the sanitary sewer distribution system. The current rate structure combines of two charges. There's a consumption charge and a fixed service charge. We're all very familiar with that. Actually, that's a popular method of charging for rates all through Ontario. What is the impact on water rates? We're going to talk just briefly about the consumption charge. It's actually the region that provides all of the water to the city. And in a recent report, which is actually coming to the Regional Council on February 28th, they will be discussing the adoption of a rate increase of some 7.6%. Now that's just on the rate itself. It's factored as a per cubic meter rate it would move from 51.2 cents per cubic meter to 55.4 cents per cubic meter. What's interesting is that on average, we use, or actually consume from the region, approximately 16.3 million cubic meters annually. Also interestingly, approximately 47% of all of that water is used by meters of a size greater than 5/8 of an inch. That's an important point because later as we discuss the water rate structure, the size of the meter will become a very important issue in determining how we charge for meter services. Another interesting point is our unaccounted water factor. This is one of those issues where we often look at our Director of Engineering and we ask, how come we lose so much water? Well, there is a program for fixing water leaks. There's also a program for improving our billable cubic meters of water. Both are very effective, and in fact, about 7 years, we've improved that particular unaccounted water factor, reducing it from 25% down to 15%. Our next slide shows a water service charge. These particular charges are monthly, and they're assessed with the responsibility of maintaining the city's distribution network maintenance. It covers both operating expenditures and also the funding of capital. This is probably the one charge, also on the sewer side, the same kind of charge that gathers the when we did our public information study, and we had a number of residents and business owners come to that sort of coffee house atmosphere, this was the charge they were talking about. Why is it that we can save on consuming water, but every month I've got to pay this service charge? So this is one of those issues that we will be talking about hopefully on March 31. What's interesting about the operating expenditures for the water, they come in about $4.1 million, and the funding of capital, approximately $4.5 million. So when you compare those two items, almost half, if not more than half, of that water monthly charge is used just to fund the capital. We do have a service delivery review ongoing right now. We are expecting that there will be some increases in costs in that area. And the final item there, again, to show you that the increased capital funding is moving to $4.5 million. Just before we go on to sewer rates, I thought you might like to know that in 2001, the total budget for water and sewer was $24.2 million. Today's budget is $37.1 million. Of those two numbers, in 2001, the regional charges were $15 million, and today they're $20 million. Our contribution to capital back in 2001 was $3.4 million. Today, it's $9.1 million. So you're seeing a movement. There is tremendous amount of dollars being spent in the water and sewer area. And for the most part, you're seeing that in infrastructure or investment in our assets. Let's go to sewer rates. Sewer consumption charge. Obviously, we have the region's sewage plants that properly dispose and treat our sewage. Annually, we have about 17.9 million cubic meters treated. And again, on February 28th, the Regional Council will be dealing with an increase in the actual per cubic meter rate. One of the important considerations when we look at the actual structure of sewer rates in the future will be to realize that the region has changed their billing procedure. It used to be that we paid as we went in terms of the sewage treatment. We paid on the flows. Now we don't. Now we pay a fixed amount, even though it's a volumetric measure. We pay a fixed amount every year, and it's based on a previous 3-year average of flows. So even if we had no sewage, which is highly unlikely, going to the regional plants, we would still be paying this year approximately $11.7 million. Our service charge is very similar to the water charge. For interest sake, the operating expenditures are approximately $3.1 million, and the capital investments, $4.6 million. That's just maintaining it from the previous year. Also, we have the service delivery review and the new program, or at least getting the program started, and that's the weeping tile disconnection. Here are the proposed rates. As I mentioned earlier, this is just an interim step. We realize that there is a water sewer rate structure review. We realize that these rates may change drastically after we go through that review and have a full discussion on that. But while we're discussing it, the region has increased or will be increasing their costs. I would not want the council to incur a deficit as a result of waiting for charging higher rates to collect sufficient revenues to pay for these costs. Water consumption, the increase would be 7.2%. Conversely, for sewer consumption, approximately 2.5%. So the overall total consumption charge would go from $1.46 to $1.53, an increase of 4.7%. You'll also see the water fixed charge and the sewer fixed charge. The water fixed charge would be going up by 7.2%. The sewer fixed charge, 9.8%. The total services charge monthly now, and this is for a meter of a 5/8 to 1 inch size of 8.4%. Again, I'd like to reiterate that we are doing a water sewer rate review. We've been working diligently with Mike Loudon. We've also consulted the public. We've been working hand in hand with Mr. Ed Belowski. He's been very helpful to Mr. Mike Loudon. And I think that when you see the report from Mr. Loudon sometime in mid-March, you'll see a full presentation of the opportunities, or at least the options, of how to restructure the rates. We're hoping to have that report to you by the 17th of March, but that will already be a full evening. We are intending that March 31 would be the tentative date where you would set aside sufficient time at least to have a full discussion. You may not make a decision that night, but at least we will have a first full discussion on the water sewer rate review. So once again, as per F 2008-10, we're asking for a passage of the 2008 municipal utility budget, the passing our approval of the water and sewer rates for Schedule A. We're asking for the approval of the amending bylaw, and finally that later in March we would return to this subject matter and deal with these rates once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burden. Do I have any members of council that have any questions of Mr. Burden? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. One of the major things that certainly I found in Mr. Belowski is the fact that this is a utility set up in, I guess, 2001. who is the ultimate individual responsible for the utility? To provide information, to have questions asked, to get information, either from the public or for the council? Has there been an individual identified who is responsible for that?
Through the chair, there is no single individual. It is a shared discipline between finance, municipal works, Niagara Falls Hydro, and the service center. That has led itself to a myriad of problems, not only in communication between the four parties, but also in the public getting sufficient answers to their questions.
So you're agreeing with what we said? Yeah. We got to have somebody who is the ultimate individual to go to. Definitely there's numerous disciplines that would have to be involved, but there should be a key person who is responsible to provide information. Now, you don't have the daily routine of having meetings with Mr. Belowski and getting up to date like I do. I wish you did. Maybe that would save me some time. But, here we are. His last information about getting information to Mr. Loudon to carry out the reports. We made the decision early in January to have Mr. Loudon do this. Now there's been, up until a few days ago, 2 reports out of 15 that have been sent to him. He really can't do anything until he gets all of the documentation. And who is responsible for sending that information on and coordinating this with Mr. Loudon so that we can carry out this study?
Through the chair, we've had ongoing difficulty in securing several pieces of the information from our service provider in the billing and collections issue. That is where most of our numbers reside, and we've had considerable difficulty in dealing with that. As of today, in fact, in chatting with Mr. Belowski, we were able to transfer to him a good deal of information. We may not have had a chance to update you on that today, but we were able to transfer to him a considerable amount of information, not only to Mr. Loudon, but also to Mr. Belowski.
So where do we stand with respect to your suggestion that he's going to be concluding or submitting this sometime after the middle of March, and we're going to have a meeting on the 31st? Is that do you feel comfortable with that?
We've asked for that continued expedited process. We do rely on Mr. Loudon to try and keep us up to date. He's been very forthcoming with the information requests. We've tried to satisfy them. We have run into difficulties. Today, I've emailed him and asked for a progress report to hopefully see his first draft by the end of the end of next week.
Well, here we are. I think if we had had an individual involved who was responsible for getting this moving along, we could have been here discussing the utility budget for 2008 in the future by having this information. And if any of these statistics are accurate, where the residential user is subsidizing the non-residential areas are true, then there's no wonder that the public is upset with their sewer and water rates. And here we are recommending another 6 and 7 and 8 and 9% increase this year. Somebody has to pay, I think, but it has to be fair and equitable so that everybody is paying their fair share. The figures that I have that show the unjust skewing of this was a 59% by the residential taxpayer and 41% by the non-residential, and that has moved up grossly over the years to a case of 75% residential to 25% non-residential. And that seems to be where all the concern is, and why we hear so much of a complaint about the sewer and water rates from the residential taxpayer. So I hope that we can move as quickly as possible to see if these suggested figures, percentages are accurate, and what we can do to try to take some of the burden of the residential taxpayer and put it where it belongs, in fairness and equity, on the non-residential user. I hope these statistical percentages that I have are inaccurate, because if they're accurate, no wonder we're getting constant complaints about sewer and water rates.
Any other comments by members of council? If not, then we do have a report in front of us. Mr. Mayor.
Well, Mr. Chair, pending Mr. Loudon's advice, and I know that had we listened to the recommendation of staff at the time that Mr. Loudon was going to be engaged, I think it was way back in the fall, that we could have had a report now that would deal with the entire year. And I understand Mr. Burden's concern that he would like to obviously have something to allow us to do a billing for the first part of the year. I think that that's correct. So I would make a motion to approve this pending any further adjustment that this council may want to recommend when we receive Mr. Loudon's report.
Okay. And do I have a seconder to that motion? Councilor Maves.
I believe this is an interim budget till we get this thing finalized, and so I'd be prepared to second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any other councilors wish to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Councilor Fisher and Thompson are opposed. Motion's carried. Moving on, we move now to the operations budget, and we have Report F 2008-11 dealing with the 2008 general purposes budget. Is that going to give a presentation?
Mr. Chair, I'll just go through a couple of slides just to bring us back to the number. We discussed the general purpose budget on several occasions. You'll recall the last time we met, we were looking at a budget of about 5.4%, and we were asked to sort of bring that down. We have done that, and what we'll do is just move really quickly through this. We have a budget right now that we're dealing with at $93 million. And I've got a few slides just to remind you again, how that's broken down in terms of expenditures. As you can see, a large component of our budget is in fixed costs, particularly related to salaries, wages, and so on, to the tune of about just over $43 million. The bottom line here is a little skewed, as we also talked about before, because it shows an increase in expenditures of over 13% from 07 to 08, and you recall that a large part of that is because of the amalgamation of transit into our budget. That accounts for approximately $8 million of that increase. And we did break that down at a previous meeting and went into those kind of details. The next slide is just, again, a quick overview of the revenue side of things, which we've also dealt with, and obviously the 13.2 is balanced here. It shows where most of our revenue comes from. The largest part, of course, is taxation. And while it shows a 4.9% increase there, that's a combination of the increase in the levy as well as new assessment. And we're certainly not asking for a 4.9% increase. The following page really is where we're at right now. And based on the direction of council, we have a proposed operating budget of 2.48% increase, which has an impact based on the average home of $159 of approximately $20.61 a year. So that's really where we stand on this. We are hoping this evening to get approval on this operating budget. And as we've had a bit of a preliminary discussion on the capital budget, and we're going to get into that in a minute, the items listed in the 08 capital budget will not affect the 08 general purpose budget. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So the bottom line on this particular budget is that we are at a 2.48% increase, and we would ask your consideration of that.
Are there questions of Mr. McDonald by members of council? Councilor Ainoni.
Actually, I'm confused. Can you give me some clarification as to why the capital budget will not impact '08? Because I don't understand it. I'm thinking people at home are a little confused too.
Certainly, that's a good question. We're going to get into that in a little more detail in the capital budget, but what happens is when you look at the 08 items that we're going to talk about in a minute on capital budget, they will be projects that will begin in 08. But the way we do the financing for the budgets, of course, is we use a cash flow situation to help us through the projects during construction and so on, and we don't actually begin the debenture of the project until the following year when the project is finished. And then what happens is we have to pick up the cost of the carrying cost for that debenture, the debt, and the interest. So projects that you will approve in 08, it won't really have an impact relative to debenture charges until 09. And so we budget it within the general purpose budget to carry as we do through our typical BAs, bankers' acceptance notes, and line of credit funds. We've always done it that way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I have a problem with the capital budget as a whole, I have to be honest, I did not independently study just 08 of the capital budget. I did the thing in its entirety, so I cannot pull that off the top of my head. Are you saying we may start something in 08 that we're not comfortable with as we discuss greater the 09 debenture? Maybe we start something now where debenture to be paid for 09, and what if we don't want to debenture as we get into the cost of debt? What if we're not looking at supporting the debenture in 09? So how can we start something now that we may not approve funding? I'm confused. I don't understand how I can look at it as a whole when you're asked. That's all I can look at it. I cannot pull it independently.
Look, Mr. Chair, just at the operating budget, it's quite appropriate to approve the general purpose budget as it is. The decision on the capital budget is really totally independent, because if you decide you don't want to do any capital budgets in 08, it doesn't change this general purpose budget. In relative to the debenturing cost and so on. If you decide to go with all of the projects that are listed in 08, then, and we're going to talk about that, it will have an impact on your 09 budget, because that's when you start to pick up the debt for it. So I know it's a bit confusing because we're doing work in 08, but we handle that work through our normal cash flow and use of various financial tools. But the key here is the debenture, and that's what we get stuck with eventually when we do the capital works project. So.
Okay. Are there any other members of council? Councillor Thompson, please.
Yes, I'm in the same place I was several weeks ago when we discussed the budget. I think I'm like a lone wolf in the wilderness when it comes to a zero budget, and that was always my feeling. If you work hard enough on something, you can make it happen. And if you start going through this line by line, you can't tell me if we're down to 2.48, but that can't be achieved. But I know that there isn't a will to accomplish that around this table. But I still haven't heard where we're going or what's happening with the Humane Society. We still haven't heard whether the regional NETCO, whether we have any authority to do anything. I know they sent a letter back saying, tell us where we differ or what the problem is with respect to the NETCO budget. I'd love to keep it here at the local level. All kinds of questions that have not been responded to, and yet here we are trying to do this final budget. Is the questions I asked previously, which were documented, can we have some answers to them?
Chair, there's not a lot that has changed in those areas. You appreciate that NETCO will be coming to speak to council. We have allocated additional funds in the budget to handle animal control. All I can suggest really is that we have allocated the money. If it turns out that we in fact don't spend the money, we'll end up with a surplus. And like any budgets, we try to make sure we're properly protected. And as you also know, we've never had an operating budget where we didn't have a surplus at the end of the year. In fact, this year, which is helping us a great deal, we have an excess of $2 million surplus that really helps us with this 08 budget from 07. And so I would suggest you will be dealing with those issues. Just because you approve this budget doesn't mean they're done, it doesn't mean they're over. We will be bringing the issue on animal control to you for consideration, and we will be discussing the NETCO item again as soon as the chairman it comes to our council, and I think that's already scheduled.
Okay, Councilor Fisher, please.
Thank you. The times have not changed since the 2000 when I first came here on council. We were in tough times then, and we were in tough times now. We may not have seen the full picture yet, but between the gas prices and all the utility prices and the cost of food going up, it's getting more difficult for people to live here in our city. And I can tell you, way back in the 2000, we went for 0% increase, and that's the only thing I'm going to vote on. I will not go with any increases whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of council wish to make a comment? Councilor Mix.
Just happened to notice the reserve fund. Just wondering, can we tell me roughly how much we do have in reserves?
That's Ken.
We got a $2 million surplus, but right now how much we have in reserves? That's the question.
Okay.
The reserves for this year are not complete because it's part of our year-end, but we don't anticipate any real significant change from the previous year. At the end of 2006, the total reserves were $75 million. Now, that included total special purpose reserves of approximately 12.8, in the capital holding, which is how we fund capital projects, of $24 million, and then $37 million in our reserves. And that's because we don't anticipate any. Now, remember that reserves, we have, there's obligatory reserves, like the development charge reserves, that have to be used for funding projects. And as we'll get into in the capital budget, those monies are spoken for in future projects and future projects. And, okay?
Okay. Councilor Ring and then Councilor Carrier, please.
I had a little toss-up here whether it was going to be Councillor Iannone or myself who stood up and made this clarification, but there was never in recent memory a 0% increase budget year. What happened in the period that Councillor Fisher was referring to was the water sewer utility was being moved toward, and costs were being moved off the general tax bill onto the water sewer bill, which went up quite a bit. And instead of those, because of the cost reduction, the general tax bill going down, it stayed the same, and the inflationary costs, rising utilities, wages, and so forth. The room that was created was filled up by, to absorb these increasing costs. So there wasn't a 0% increase. What happened was, instead of seeing the increase on the tax bill, we saw it on the water and sewer bills. And Mr. Burden has since informed us that there is actually a term for this, and it's called infilling. So we've never managed to achieve that, and it's not realistic to expect to unless you want to drastically slash services.
Okay. On that point, Councilor Thompson.
I'm glad that was brought up because I wanted to talk on this, because it was actually mandated by the province, and we were moving to segregate the sewer and water, because every time somebody questioned the sewer and water bill, Fold had 50% on their tax bill, Welland had a different system, everyone. So the province says you must separate this, and we did it, and we were one of the leaders in doing that. But they say you never had a zero increase. We worked diligently, and I was personally involved, trying to come up with a zero budget every year. And we did it at the same time when the common sense revolution was going on, and Mr. Harris and his people cut out $5 million a year in subsidy to this city alone annually. And so we not only ate the $5 million, Yeah, maybe the sewer and water bill were paid for separately, but we ate $5 million, and we still were able to come in with zero. And I challenge anybody, including Mr. Burden, to say that that is not accurate. We had some very difficult times, and what we did, we managed the budget. Here we are, we're sitting here today, and we're saying, okay, 2.4%. Doesn't sound that bad. But with all the other charges that we're coming in with, people can't afford to stay in their own homes. They can't afford to. We got some very difficult times coming on, and we have to be mindful of that and make sure that we react to it. We did that in the early days, and we made sure that we came in with a zero budget. I don't care what kind of arguments you want to make about it, but we ate $5 million annually, where we used to get 50% subsidy for every sewer, 50% subsidy for every water line, 75% for new buses from the provincial government, 50% for the transit budget. All of that went by the boards, and we still ate that and still came in with a budget that was palatable.
We also had to pick up more services. I have Councillor Ioannoni on that point.
Please.
Okay.
I'm not going back to deja vu because I've had this debate with Councillor Thompson when he was mayor at the time, and quite frankly, the numbers we put forward at the time were substantiated by staff and verified. So all I'm saying is, when you politically spin it to, I'd like to keep, or we'd like to keep a 0% because that's what we did before, you never did it. Don't make the rest of us look like we don't want to do 0%. We clearly understand we cannot run this city with the increases that are coming to us. We're all paying the same increases. We aren't exempt on this council from paying any increase that we impose on the taxpayer. But I have a problem when it starts with, for years we did this. You had a pot of money to pull from. Instead of telling the taxpayers it was a tax increase, you had a pot of money to pull from. It didn't matter what you call it. When you pulled from here, you didn't decrease from here. You simply infilled it. So you brought the money that you charged them here over here, and you continued to charge them here. At the time I had that, and I wish I'd have brought it with me. I didn't realize we were getting into this discussion now. And I used to be able to do the numbers off my head. I'm over 40 now. It's long gone. But it's very, all the information was strictly, that was put out was strictly from staff. We don't, let's be clear to the residents, we don't have that pot to infill anymore. If we had that pot to infill, we could call it anything you wanted it and not call it a tax increase. But let's be clear for the people at home. You paid it in Spot A, you paid it in Spot P, and we didn't reduce Spot A. So we can have that debate. I'll even bring in the same number staff gave me at the time. But I don't want anybody at home thinking, because 2 people will do 0% and the rest of us won't, means we want to stick the taxpayers with, maybe I just didn't like the spin of it. But we cannot do our jobs. We cannot run the city with 0%, and it was never done in the past. And I'm not getting in a spitting contest how to adapt that.
I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, with anybody, because we've had that debate here before. I've never promised anyone a 0%, and I'm not going to feel bad because I want to run the city according to the way we're supposed to be doing it, or according to the way we knocked on doors and told people we would do it a year and a half ago.
On that point?
Sure. Mr. Burden, can I ask you a question? How difficult, did we come in with a 0 budget during those several years, actually from 92 to 203? We had, increase, that's right, yeah. No, yeah. Along with, how much did the Harris government cut out of our budget annually?
Through the chair, there was the loss of the conditional funding and unconditional funding from the provincial government, and that was to the tune of some $5 million during that period of time.
Annually?
Yes. And during the period in the early 90s, ending in 1999, we were transferring the sewer cost for sewer treatment from the tax-supported general purposes budget over to the municipal utility budget. In fact, we had anticipated that transfer might actually take a little bit longer, but when we also realized that we were moving to full metering in 2001, we made the complete change or the final step in 1999. During that period of time, there were several budgets. I don't exactly recall the numbers, but I do recall the many nights of discussions around the issue of zero increases. And I think it would be better if we would revisit the actual numbers to continue that discussion.
What does that mean? You want to discuss it
Through the
further?
chair, I don't have that factual data in front of me to say, yes, I agree with you, or I just remember the discussions that on one hand it was zero base in the sense of zero increase on the levy, and on the other hand, no, that's not correct. We simply transferred costs from one fund to another.
I have no argument with that. But if you eat $5 million a year by losses from subsidies from the provincial government, and you still come in with a zero increase, that's pretty substantial. Anyway, we'll argue about that till the cows come home, but I know what happened. I was here, and I'm very proud of that period of time.
Yeah, Councillor Carrio and Councillor Diodati that are going to talk about the general purposes budget, I think.
Thank you. Excuse me. What is our increase in spending? Mr. Chairman, what is the increase in spending this budget over last budget, not the increase in taxes? What are we going to spend more this year? Because we are getting money, we're adding money to the budget that we're not transferring to the taxes.
It's because of the amalgamation of transit shows 13.25%.
But without that,
it's around 7.
Around 7% that we're spending more this year than last year. And we're asking taxpayers for 2.4 of the increase of 7 in our spending budget.
Correct.
Leads me to what I was going to suggest that Councillor Thompson, I don't think is the lone wolf. I've been, and some of the other councillors have been, asking and pitching you and others to come in with a very modest increase. And you and I have had this discussion many times that there are certain segments of our society that can't afford the 2.5% increase. It's not all about the $159,000 house at a $20 increase. It's some of the other industries, some of the other commercial aspects, some of the people who maybe have a larger house than $159,000. Thank you. I'm not sure that's going to help me. But anyways, it's my true feeling that we can come in with a 0% increase on the ratepayers and still have an increase in our spending of 4.5%, which is going to be 4.5% more spending than we did last year. And I don't think that any of the things that are serious to us or that are very important to most of the councillors at this table are going to be affected if we go back and say it's going to be a 0% increase. I'm not saying a 0% increase in spending. 0% increase in the levy will still give us roughly a 4% increase in spending, or a little more than that, which I still think, and I believe, that we can do. So I'm going to support, I'm not going to support the 2.4. I'm going to go back to what I said originally, that I would support an increase in spending, but not enough to raise the tax.
Okay, Councillor Diodati, and I'm sorry, on that point?
Yes.
Sorry.
Mr. Chair, just to that point, just a point of clarification to our CAO. This year, our budget is $93 million, and last year, 07 budget was $82.1 million. We had, it was explained to us $8 million was added to to include the 93, or it was included in 93. That brings me to a net of $85 million. If I take the $85 million and subtract from that the 07 budget of $82.1, it's about $3 million increase in spending. I don't see the $7 or $8 million that the CAO was talking about, so I'm not sure where the discrepancy lies. I see us going from 82 net for the benefit of Councillor Carrio in 2007 to 85 net in 2008. Is that correct? Without including transit.
Yes, we actually we provided slides at our last meeting. Sorry, I don't have them all here tonight, where we showed exactly that. We took away the transit impact, and we showed the balance of that. So I don't have that exact number in front of me here. I don't know if Todd can pull that out for us right now. He can give us that information, but I don't know the exact numbers.
Mr. Harrison?
The gross amount is about $8 million. That's the difference. So that's the gross up on both the revenues and the expenses. Last year, we had about $2.5 million that we gave transit as a grant. So the net difference is the $5.5 million. There is also a $1.5 million gross up because of the gas tax. That's a transfer in and a transfer out. So that's where the $7 million figure has come from, because those are the impacts on the budget that are different than last year, because the gas tax is an inflow, and then we transfer it to the capital.
Mayor Selfie. Then to qualify that, Mr. Chair, I think it's important to understand the net difference in spending. I attribute about $3 million as an increase over the 82, not including the incentives you're talking about in and out, but I looked at the increase of about $3 million on $82 million. Is that correct? Net.
That would be approximately correct.
And I haven't got a calculator in front of me, but the math on that, I'm not sure what percentage that might be, but I think that's more realistic. So, Mr. Chair, we're looking at whether this is sustainable, and certainly we've heard from some councillors about the increase in utility costs, certainly in fuel and other costs as well. So we've got to be honest with the taxpayer in respect of what the cost of our services are, and have a budget that's sustainable and produce the services that we're maintaining today. So we aren't cutting service levels. We're trying to maintain the same amount of service and also trying to be realistic with our increase.
Yeah, Councillor Diodati.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this budget, I'm comfortable with it. I think it's realistic. I think it's responsible. I think it's reasonable. I think it's reflective of our environment. I think it's quite admirable of the people around the table wanting to get us down to 0%. I think it's an admirable thought. However, it was explained to us earlier that the cost of oil has gone over $100 a barrel a couple of times, and one of the major costs in putting in roads is going to be oil. And we have to somehow absorb these increases. And just as the city's costs rise, just as a household's costs rise, and you need to keep up with it, you need to be sustainable. And I believe it's necessary to keep up with inflation, or you get eaten up by inflation. And I'm comfortable with this budget the way it sits right now, and I'm prepared to move this budget as it is, and I would do so.
Okay, motion for acceptance by Councillor Diodati, seconded by the Mayor. Do I have any questions or comments further? If not, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Carrio, Fisher, and Thompson. Motion's carried. Thank you. Next item is Report TS 2008-15, dealing with the proposed adjustment to parking fines. This is from last meeting, and you'll remember that last meeting we didn't have the very last column. It was part of our handout, so we now have what the proposed changes are going to be in Niagara Falls and what the current charges are. So, looking for a motion to approve the set fines as set out in the schedule. Motion by Councillor Iannone, seconded by the Mayor. Any questions to the motion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Okay. Next, we'll move on to the capital budget. We have two presentations on the capital budget. One is going to be by the Board of Museums, and one is going to be by staff on the 2008 capital budget. It says on our agenda that the capital budget will come first. I'm wondering if Council would like to hear from the Board of Museums first, seeing that the capital budget could be a lengthy discussion. If so, would anyone like to make a motion? Motion by Councillor Carrio, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that we listen to the Board of Museums first. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. You never can be too certain. I would ask then, I guess, a representative from the Board of Museums. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Hi, Don.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Your Worship, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I am not Gord West, who was originally to make this presentation. Gord is feeling quite under the weather right now. I hope he is watching to make sure that I do a good stand-in job for him. You can't imagine how excited we are to be here tonight with all of the discussion we have observed to date regarding capital budgets and capital forecasts, because that is exactly why we are here. I want you to know that Gord West is the chair of the City of Niagara Falls Board of Museums, and he's also the chair of the city's 1812 Task Force. So he would have been here in that dual capacity. Tonight we do have some board members in attendance with us from the Board of Museums. Tony Caruso is far side. John Harkness is here as well. Kathy Powell, our manager. Margaret Mingle was here, and she has to leave. I suspect she's out fundraising for us as we speak. As well, you will also recognize Ruth Ann Newesteg, who is president of the Main and Ferry BIA, who is here in support of our presentation. We have been here before to let you know our intentions regarding both the bicentennial and the celebrations that will accompany it, as well as the museum, as soon as those plans became firm. As everyone knows, there was a town hall meeting with the citizens of Niagara Falls to develop priorities for the upcoming years of the bicentennial of the War of 1812. On the top of that priority list, for both those that attended the town hall meeting and the city's 1812 task force, is what has become known as the Lundy's Lane Battlefield Legacy Project. Tonight, I'll ask Kathy Powell, our museum's manager, to tell you about that vision. She will in turn introduce John Newart, representing our architects, who will present the concept plan update for the renewal of the Lundy's Lane Historical Museum, which is the primary part of the priority project for the task force. Then I'll say a few words in closing, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to ask them. So if I could ask Kathy to come forward.
I'm going to take you on a quick visioning of what the battlefield will be. So imagine it's July 2012. We've just celebrated 200 years of the War of 1812 beginning in June. You parked your car in the Sylvia Place Market, and you've walked up to the front of the Lundy's Lane Historical Museum and the Battle of Lundy's Lane Interpretive Center. Regardless of your physical abilities, you're able to enter and experience the heritage and the history housed in one of our city's most historic buildings, and also now one of our newest public buildings. When you enter the Stamford Township Hall, you'll experience a vista down the gallery into the new Interpretive Center, which will allow you to experience an exhibit showcasing Niagara Falls' nationally significant collection of War of 1812 and Battle of Lundy's Lane artifacts. Then you'll be given the opportunity to enjoy a video, a very new and exciting look at the history of the War of 1812 and the Battle of Lundy's Lane. It'll provide you a grounding so that you can have a trip out onto the battlefield. When you step outside the building, you'll step into a vibrant and busy farmers market, pick up some local fruit to wet your whistle while you're visiting the battlefield, walk out onto Main Street, that is beginning to see a culture-led revitalization with stores and restaurants bringing the community to the uptown of our city in historic Drummondville. Your battlefield experience will continue on the south side of Lundy's Lane into the Drummond Hill Cemetery, where you can follow interpretive trails, including interpretive signage, which will tell you where you are on the battlefield, what happened in that location, and where to go next, and possibly public art. And then you'll be able to take the public walkway over Lundy's Lane into the Redmond Lands, where you can continue your experience on the battlefield with more interpretive trails and signage and the lovely park there And then complete your experience at the Battleground Hotel Museum, where you can learn about our community's tourism history and stop for a lemonade, hopefully, or some sort of a refreshment, non-alcoholic, of course. The Lundy's Lane Battlefield is a National Historic Site. Its significance is undoubted. If the Battle of Lundy's Lane had gone in the other direction, we'd all be using green money instead of colored. In 2012, all eyes will be on this part of Canada. All eyes from the U.S. and Canada will be focused here. This is the heart of our country, and it's the location of the heaviest fighting from the War of 1812. We wouldn't want them to look here and see what we have today. I'm going to introduce our architect, John Newart, who is from Baird Sampson Newart, who has done a concept plan update. Some of you may or may not recall, if you were here, in 1987, the museum board started this whole project, so it's been 20 years already in the making, and did a feasibility study to see whether or not the Stamford Township Hall was really the right location for the museum that's there now. And in that feasibility study, it took a look at whether or not we should have a new building, use the Township Hall, find another historic building in our community, what should we do with that? And the final decision from that feasibility study was to stick with the Stamford Township Hall. It's on the Lundy's Lane Battlefield. Its significance is very important. And so in 1987, a plan was put together regarding what could happen to that location. 20 years later, and lots of growth since then, we've had to revisit that plan. The growth from 20 years ago wasn't enough to take us past today. We need to think 20 more years into the future, and that's what we asked John to take a look at, and he'll give you a short tour about that. Thanks.
Yes, as Kathy said, our firm was involved in the original feasibility study in 1987, and we're pleased to have been invited back to undertake an update of this earlier work. And I'll do a quick overview of the planning principles, focusing on the architectural concepts that underpin the concept plan update. I'll bring your attention to the material here on the screen here. And I'll use this PowerPoint to help direct some of the my comments in relationship to the screen behind you here, so I apologize for those who might have to turn around. Essentially, the project is organized to provide pride of place to the existing building. The existing building is characterized as a freestanding building with the side yard open space, and so the intention is to organize the addition to the rear of the facility, and that basically maintains the status of the existing museum as a freestanding building as viewed along the Sylvia Street and Ferry Street frontages. And by placing the addition towards the rear, it creates a kind of a node of activity between the market and the museum. And the intention is to try and use this building as a catalyst for both market revitalization and for the local neighborhood improvement initiatives. And by doing so and locating the building in the backside, it presumes that the parking for the facility will be accommodated within the Sylvia Place market proper. And that initiative has been discussed with staff. This next slide basically describes the kind of address and entry system with the assumption that vehicles will be arriving in the marketplace. We have to maintain the front entrance to the museum as it addresses the Ferry Street frontage, and that the intention is to revitalize the existing covered walkway that runs across the edge of the site, and that piece of infrastructure is supposed to be redeveloped and then provide a pedestrian armature linking the marketplace, arrival place, with the front door, and that this covered walkway becomes an outdoor exhibit environment that will be used by both market users and trying to entice market users to the front door of the museum. The museum itself is proposed to be organized to reuse its existing entrance and to provide barrier-free access so that all visitors can come through the front door and to experience the facility. And this green arrow describes a service entry which will be organized off the adjoining roadway. The blue arrow describes a special route for the battlefield tour groups, which are seen as a separate user group, and they would essentially provide kind of directed access to an exhibit that will be organized within the ground floor of the new museum. This group of arrows here describes how the inside of the building is organized to take advantage of the courtyard to allow for programming events to spill out right from what is being proposed as a multi-purpose room to expand directly out into an outdoor courtyard space. This covered walkway is a key link that's part of the historic Drummondville urban design guidelines. This drawing here is an excerpt from that urban design guidelines. This is the location of the Lundy's Lane Museum. This arrow describes the covered walkway linkage, which is seen as a larger set of linkages that would create a consolidated visitor experience from the museum to the battlefield site. As part of this idea of creating larger open space linkages, the courtyard space is proposed to be developed as a secure programming space, and the covered walkway provides the opportunity to seal the courtyard at the northern and southern ends so that you can create a secure place for events and off-hour requirements. The courtyard is also one of the more visible aspects of a sustainability approach, where we're proposing to harvest rainwater from the roofs of the building and to use that water as a source of irrigation for the lawn area here. We anticipate with the measures that we've designed to achieve a LEED silver status. And for those not familiar with the LEED rating system, LEED is an acronym for Leadership in Environment and Energy Design, and it's a program that's becoming increasingly adopted across North America as the standard for how institutional buildings should be developed. And we thought that water would be an important resource to celebrate because of how the symbolic importance that water has within the city itself, and that water that's collected from the roofs would be used, as I said, as an irrigation source for the what we hope would be an intensively utilized courtyard. We've also proposed to develop, as a kind of buffer zone, an area that mediates between the market and the museum proper, which will consolidate pedestrian activity at the edge of the site and provide a resource for and an amenity for pedestrians using the market, and to create a shared ownership of a portion of the museum site for both the market users and the museum itself. We've also had lively discussions with the Heritage Board about the proposed location of the monument to Queen Victoria, which is currently located in this corner of the site here. We've looked at relocating it into the actual corner of of Queen and Ferry Street. We propose to locate it up as part of this new courtyard space, and the position of the Heritage Board is that they would certainly prefer to see it relocated in a location more consistent with its original location at Ferry and Main Street. We're certainly open to looking at that detail. This is a view showing the consolidated addition on the back of the facility. But you can see the covered walkway that runs beside the market, the new ramp that provides barrier-free access to the front door, and the addition to the rear, which again provides pride of place to the existing building and tries to work with the materials and the overall height and massing of the existing building to create an ensemble that reflects both a new identity for the museum, but one that is respectful to the kind of heritage roots of the city and, of course, the Stanford Town Hall. In between the addition and the new building, there's an elevator that's proposed, which acts as a kind of separator piece, and then you can see there's a kind of large, almost like a barn door that can be retracted to allow service access into that side of the building. This is a view upon entry, where you get an axial sight line through the facility with a mural depicting the War of 1812 exhibition that will be housed in the new facility, a donor wall immediately upon entry, and most importantly, a reception function where you immediately come in the facility and you're greeted with staff. The lobby space essentially acts as a kind of fulcrum from which you can get immediately access to washrooms, coats, visitor services, and you can then proceed into the museum. These are the floor plans of the museum. On the left side is the first floor plan, which is organized. Visitor services function are consolidated at the entry, and then there's a gallery and a gift shop are located immediately on the ground floor. And then visitors proceed into a kind of zone that exists between the exhibition space of the new addition, and this zone in between the addition and the existing building is almost like an outdoor covered space with a staircase that will take you up to the second level. And within the addition, there's an exhibition space, this space being dedicated to the War of 1812, and this being a multi-purpose room, which is essentially seen as both allowing internal events to occur and also be suitable as a revenue-generating rental facility. On the second floor of this facility, a temporary exhibition hall is organized within the new facility with storage facilities organized at one end and a second-story exhibition floor that will essentially accommodate revamped existing exhibitry and expanded exhibitry. The lower level of the facility is organized to accommodate a research room, which will be the only public destination on this floor, and a suite of staff offices and artifact storage and workshop spaces and mechanical areas housed within the basement of the existing building. We looked at quite carefully utilizing the existing attic space to avoid more extensive basement level, and came to the conclusion that from an artifact conservation standpoint, it would be much more beneficial to house the artifacts within a new facility rather than putting them through the temperature swings that you would get within even a reconditioned attic space. So this slide shows the organization of the primary galleries, gallery 1, 2, galleries 1, 2, 3, and 4 being the temporary exhibition gallery. And the, again, that research room, staff functions, and the kind of service core in the basement of the existing building. And how the courtyard might look, you can see the new addition creating a framed end and framing the space of the courtyard with the multi-purpose room capable of being opened up to allow events within the multi-purpose room to spill out into the courtyard space. The covered walkway being a site that would help to engage the market users and to create a surface, an outdoor exhibition space for interpretive materials, and a stage at the street side elevation that could be used for multi-purpose events. And this is a view sort of in the space in between the addition and the existing building. The existing building here is depicted on the right, the addition on the left. You get a glimpse into the multi-purpose room. This is the broad staircase that takes you up to the second story. This staircase takes you down to the lower level, and you can see in the distance this covered walkway that could be used for interpretive signage, and the cistern here that would collect rainwater from the roof and could be an environmental garden for the facility. And this is a view from the multi-purpose room looking out into the garden and the courtyard space with the large door that's capable of retracting here to close off the space for other types of events. And then this is a kind of earlier concept view at the second level, which basically demonstrates how the addition will allow you to get glimpses of the existing building. So you come out of the building, you're into the new building, and you're using the new building as a lens to look back on the old building. And this is a view in the basement level, a kind of early concept sketch showing how we can reveal parts of the existing limestone structure within the building to create that sense of a kind of traditional sense of a research room, this being the research room proper, and this being the staff area here. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett.
Thanks very much, John. I'll conclude very quickly, Mr. Chair. I think it's important to note what the outcomes will be of this legacy project. I'd like to think in Niagara Falls that there are 4 critical pieces of infrastructure that are under development or that have already been developed that most communities in this province and probably this country are extremely envious of. Don't end your sentence with a preposition, Don. The first, obviously, is the McBain Community Center. The second is the Bob Gale Complex that is under development and will be a showpiece for this province. The third will be the Convention and Civic Center, which is well on its way. And the fourth piece of infrastructure, which is absolutely essential to a community, is its civic museum. And that is where our heritage is preserved and must be preserved and protected. So out of this project, what we will have is the creation of an interpretive center, which does not currently exist in this city, on the Lundy's Lane battlefield that will provide a market-ready tourism product in time for the bicentennial of the War of 1812 celebrations and commemorations. It will preserve our community's unique story in an expanded building that is accessible to everyone. It will be a catalyst for the revitalization of the historic Drummondville Community Improvement Area, which is a council-endorsed community objective in the Main and Ferry area. And finally, and let's not forget this, it will result in the responsible use of our heritage resources. So, the next obvious question is, what's all this going to cost? The total cost for this project, the whole Lundy's Lane, Battle of Lundy's Lane Legacy Project, will be $11.5 million. And it's anticipated that this financing will be provided through a 4-way, what we call a partnership for protecting heritage. Of that $11.5 million, the cost of the museum part of the project is $9.7 million. And what we envisage is a similar kind of funding proposal that currently exists. We are looking to the federal government for a third of that cost, to the provincial government for a third of that cost, and to the municipal government for a third of that cost. But of that 1/3 from the municipality, we're really only looking for 1/6 of the cost, because the museum board is unanimous in its determination to raise 50% of that share. So in terms of the municipal share, it works out to about $1.92 billion. A couple of interesting things about that figure. 20 years ago, when the council of the day did endorse the museum development project, the cost of that project was $2.5 million, which the city endorsed as a project. Without any consideration, I understand, at that time for cost sharing. I should also point out to you, and it will be evident in the pictures, which are very graphic in your report, that the building that is the Lundy's Lane Historical Museum requires some very significant renovations, whether or not the expansion takes place, to the tune of approximately $2 million. So something has to be done to this building right now. But now is the time when the bicentennial is coming along. We have begun the process of initiating discussions with the federal and the provincial governments as partners to this project. We have already begun a capital campaign in You will be aware of the Legacy Wall program, which we have begun at the museum, which is intended to raise some of the funds that will be directed towards this building project. We have a brand for the campaign already, and the brand, and you'll see it everywhere, hopefully, and it is Celebrate the Past, Build the Future, and that's what we intend to do. The world will be on our doorstep in 2012, 2014 for the bicentennial celebrations. As I have said to you on previous occasions, it is our civic duty to protect and preserve our heritage. Tonight, we are anticipating your endorsement of this legacy project, because there is no way that we can go out to our community partners and request their support without your endorsement. And secondly, we hope that you will see fit to include this project in your 5-year capital forecast so that we can be ready to receive the world. We must have a shovel in the ground by the fall of 2009 in order that the museum will be opened to receive the world. We hope that you will support us in this endeavor.
Okay, I have a couple councillors that wish to make comment. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I have Councillor Iannoni and then the Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking for the cost.
Okay.
And just clear, as we go, I went through the capital budget while he's speaking, and maybe through you to staff, if I'm not mistaken, my mind's boggled. I'm losing sleep how we're going to have to do this capital budget. He said $2 million. I thought I was going to fall off my chair. Not that it's not a worthwhile project, but we're really trying to balance our dollars here. Is there anything in this capital budget for Main and Ferry? Because I see the downtown CIP and money's allocated, but I didn't see anything for Main and Ferry allocated. Did we just not put them in here?
Mr. McDonald?
There's allocations in the operating budget to deal with the incentive program, but there is no money in the capital budget for the Main and Ferry. But the incentive program is accommodated in the operating budget.
So how much in the operation budget was the incentive program?
I'll have to ask Mr. Burton to do that.
Why is the incentive program in the other budget and downtown is in the capital budget?
Just because of the requests that have been coming forward, the sheer size of it and the number of buildings involved and so on, we just anticipate there'll be much more money required. But again, that's not being determined yet.
Would you like the exact amount, Councilor?
I would, because we've already passed that budget. I'd be interested to know what we invested.
Mr. Burton?
Through the chair, we have $475,000 allocated for Main and Ferry. That includes the additional $200,000 contribution in contract services for land purchases. You may recall that in our earlier discussion, that $200,000 would be offset by land sales proceeds. We wouldn't purchase until we actually had the land sales proceeds before doing that.
So, available in incentive programs for the Main and Ferry CIP is $475,000.
That is correct.
Well, I can see in fairness where I'll be capping downtown, so I'm glad to see I have that ceiling.
Okay, I have Mayor Salsi, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to acknowledge the efforts of the members of the Museums Board along with staff for their presentation and their foresight. I know that this project is a certainly exciting project. It's a challenge for us because of the capital requirements. So I want to remind Council of a few things. First of all, a couple of years ago, we established a bicentennial task force that was going to look at creating some significance to celebrate the 200 years of peace between the United States and Canada. And over the last 24 months or so, they have focused their direction on a particular project, which of course we now have before us, and it has been presented to us as potential. There are some other projects planned, as you may be aware, in terms of having events take place. But we're looking at something of a legacy project that I think we could be proud of. The fact that Niagara Falls is host to one of the most famous battlegrounds of the War of 1812 is something that should draw our attention to the importance of establishing the legacy that this project may offer. I know that the challenges, as I said earlier, are ones of capital and contribution. We have made initial presentations and proposals, not just actually presentations, I should say, to both the provincial member of parliament and the federal member of parliament. We have not focused on a particular amount yet. We've talked in general terms of a third. And most recently, with respect to the presentation we're making here to council, we had the chance to make a presentation to our federal member. We believe that both the federal and provincial governments will be setting up amounts to be attributed towards the bicentennial celebrations of the War of 1812 between the years 2012 and 2014. This project in particular presents offers a number of potentials for us. Of course, it has very historical significance. It offers both heritage and cultural experiences in our city. It has an economic impact, as we've heard, certainly on the support of the redevelopment of the historic Drummondville Main and Ferry, the reestablishment of our Sylvia Marketplace. It goes to binational tourism, which is, of course, as you know, increasing every year. And it also provides a gateway experience to those properties on Lundy's Lane. And there is a discussion with the Lundy's Lane BIA to share in that gateway cost to create a gateway to that area. So we have had a request here. The question is how we do it. And we would like to be able to say to the other levels of government, the partners, if you may say, that we have established this, at least in our sites as the city goes. We may not have the money this year. We may have to find some ways of raising those funds, and I know that the Museum Board has already talked about their legacy project, which I had the chance to experience with them on the kickoff, at least for the legacy wall, and they have further comments I'm sure that they'd like to make later at a later date on a capital campaign. I would like the council to consider at least placing this project in the 5-year capital horizon, given the fact that we'd like the opportunity to be able to go to other levels of government. We're not committing ourselves at this point if we do include it, and I'd ask for your indulgence this evening to make that consideration. And we'll have a chance, hopefully, to debate this in the future, but it would give us an opportunity to say that at least it's been established within the capital budget of the city so we can approach other levels of government.
If you'd like to make that motion,
I'll make that
you'll
motion.
find a seconder. Motion by Mayor Salsi, seconded by Councillor Wing. Any questions or comments to the motion of adding this project to our 5-year budget? Councillor Wing.
Just a couple of comments. We know that the existing building, which we own, needs work, substantial work. We know that the bicentennial is approaching, and what I really like is the idea of partnerships. We partnered primarily with the YMCA, but with others as well, to build the McBain Center. We've committed to building a new Boys and Girls Club in partnership with them, and here's another partnership. I mean, I don't like it when somebody comes and wants us to fund everything, but when they come and ask us to be partners in a big fundraising endeavor, and ours is just a fraction of the total cost, that appeals to me. I wanted to get a little clarification on what exactly endorsement means. I know that, there's a little concern around the council table about taking on more financial commitments, but it seems to me that endorsement allows them to go to the federal government, allows them to go to the provincial government and say, this has our council's blessing, and we're a lot more likely to get money out of the federal or provincial governments if we've endorsed it. And also, this was one of the projects under consideration for the Ontario Municipal Infrastructure Investment Fund, which we put another project forward as this year's application. But if we've endorsed this project, then we'd be able to put it forward next year as our application, and it would meet the criteria for that extremely well, probably better than the one we put forward this year. So I'm happy to second the motion, and perhaps we can just have a little, just everybody's coming, we have a little more clarification on what endorsement exactly means.
I'll ask Mr. McDonald or Mr. Burden to clarify, please.
You teach English? Because I think actually Alderman Wing has explained that. I mean, really it's an acknowledgement that this project is supported by the city. The real issue is at what level of support, and I think the request is supported by adding it to the capital budget, and I think that's the endorsement that's being sought. And I think in order to get credibility at the other levels of government, you're going to have to show it in your capital budget. Or else it's just a project in theory, and there's really no support from the city for this project. So I think that's what the request is, and as you know, it's not currently in the capital budget, and I have a feeling shortly we're going to be discussing the capital budget, and we're going to end up with further meetings to really formalize the long-term capital budget, and my guess is that's where we'll have to decide if it becomes part of that or not. But, so I don't know if you're prepared to add it at this point, because we're in a kind of a transition phase really with the budget, so, or whether you want to defer it until we get to do the strategic planning session that you referred to a bit earlier.
Well, there is a, sorry, Mayor Southey. Yep.
Motion was to refer, Mr. Chair.
Motion was to refer. Councillor Ioannoni?
Well, I like Mr. McDonald's suggestion to defer it to see what we're pulling out, to see, I think the project's fantastic, but I'd be a hypocrite if I stood here and added $2 million more to $90 million proposed debt that we have in front of us. I can't support that. If we're deferring it to look at our strategic plan to say, yes, we can support it at a later date, but I mean, I'd hate to give them false hope now and say, yes, we'll put it on the capital budget, then when we're looking at $92 million, where we all said we didn't want any more debt, and then we cut it at a later time. I'd prefer a motion to defer it until we've discussed the capital budget more in depth. So nobody here is opposed to it, but we've all equally said we're opposed to $90 million. It kind of makes us hypocrites to add $2 million more to this proposed debenture. So I can't support a motion to endorse, but I'd like to make a motion for deferral until we have our strategic planning session.
Do I have a seconder to the motion of deferral? Okay, I just want to see if there's a seconder to the motion for deferral. Okay, seeing none. Councillor Mace?
So I'm just wondering, it seems that we're going to approach the provincial and the federal government for one-third. I mean, this was the gateway to Canada. This saved our country. And why are we only asking for a third? Can someone answer that? Can we ask them for more?
Mayor Southey.
Well, Mr. Chair, we still don't know what the requirements may be for both the federal and provincial government. We did approach the federal member, our minister, and he endorses this project, and he says he's supporting it. We're waiting for a budget to come forward from both levels of government. So my request is to refer it to the capital. It's not to include it yet, but to refer it to capital, which, as you know, it doesn't endorse it, it just refers it. So we can deal with that at the time. We'll debate it at the time we're debating our capital project.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor to refer this project to our 5-year capital budget. Is there any other comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Ioannoni is opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much for your presentation to Mr. Jackson, Ms. Powell, and Mr. Newitt. We'll move on now to the presentation on the 2008 capital budget. And I would once again ask staff. Are there fireworks tonight?
Inside?
Oh, no, that's Friday night, sorry.
I'm going to sort of modify this a little bit based on the comments that we've already received, but what we wanted to do is give a quick overview of the capital budget. We've already had some discussion on that, and I'll bring it to a point where we can really focus in on the 08 items. So I'll move on to the next page here, where we talk really about the capital budget, and we again touched on this a bit, but the capital budget is really a bit of a plan as to what we might be investing in our assets over the next 5 years. And again, with the capital budget, the costs for that capital budget typically don't impact our current operating budget, but they definitely impact overall the financial ability, I guess, of our community to pay for these things. But 08 items are impacted in 09 and 10, and in fact, in some cases, they go on for several years for us to be able to pay them. The capital budget is kind of an umbrella budget, really, because it's supported not only by the operating budget, because that's where we do transfers to reserves, we deal with the interest cost and the debt cost. We just approved the utility budget, and you saw literally millions of dollars in that utility budget that goes really to support the capital budget. And the other issue, and we had some discussion earlier tonight on development charges, and we took some time to understand better what that is. That development charges are critical in supporting the capital budget. And so without appropriate funds in the development charges and the other budgets, we couldn't possibly deal with this capital budget. The next chart is kind of the scary one that's been referred to. It's actually just a bit of a summary of really tab 1 in your capital budget book that you've had now for a period of time. And it shows in year 1 and 08 a projected expenditure of up to $78 million. And you can see over the next several years that cost comes down each year. Thank God, because we wouldn't have that kind of money. But $78 million is a lot of money, and there's some huge items in there. That's why it's really this large spike in this graph. And one of the big projects that we begin to pay for in that year is the arena. There's approximately $18 million in the budget towards the arena cost. There's just shy of $30 million in that budget for public works projects. And we'll get into some detail on that in a minute, but very large projects like Grassy Brook, Kaler, Garner, finishing off Dorchester Road, all the projects that we've been talking about all along. What you're looking at here is the gross costs, not the net cost of these projects. So it's quite significant. We have, $1.3 million in here for a new pumper for the fire department. So it's a huge cost, and it's a big hit for us to deal with. If you look at chart number 1, in tab 1, I should say, the first summary page, what you see is basically the format that we follow throughout the capital budget, and it's broken down basically with engineering fees, building costs, land costs, and so on. And what we try to do as we've gone through the book, then we give you details of individual projects, and we follow that same format just to be consistent with it. And so in each tab, there's a summary sheet at the beginning, and then we move into the explanation on each one of those projects. The next chart refers to, or the next slide refers to the handout. Did we miss a slide there, Dean? The back one. Yeah, this capital budget summary sheet, the last meeting, we didn't get time to talk about the capital budget, but there was a handout sheet, you recall, that was given to you. And in that, this is a new addition to the capital budget this year. But what we try to do, because we have this thick binder, we wanted you to get a handle on the fact that there's a lot of the items in this capital budget you've already approved. They're already in process. The funding is already in place. And to be honest, there's a waste of time for us to get into further discussion on those items. But they have to be included in the capital budget because we're in the process of funding those projects. But there's no need, to be honest, for council to discuss them at this point. They're already approved and they're already in process. And if you look at that chart, the first few columns from left to right, you see more details as you go into this. These are projects that are in place. There's some more details in this sheet because some of them renamed to help you follow them. So it's really important, if you move over to the far right, the second one from the right, you can see new projects starting in 08. They're the projects that you have not approved yet, and that you have full discretion to decide are you going to fund those or not. And that's where most of that $78 million is. What we've done is we've identified on this summary page the names of those projects, and you can see the numbers beside them. The page number refers to the detailed sheets within your budget book. And so what we had hoped, of course, is that as you reviewed your budget book, you focus in on that particular column, because that's dealing with the 08. And then on the very last column are other projects from 09 to 12. And they're projects also that you have not approved. And so any real discussion on projects should stay focused on those last two columns because you haven't approved those yet. As I said, there's a lot of other items in there, but we're already committed to those projects. We're hoping, and we'll revise this as we go on, that this will become a valuable tool as in future when you get the budget books, that it will be able to focus you in on the areas that we need immediate decisions on. The funding sources, so what we looked at a few minutes ago on that $78 million is really the gross expenditures. But as I mentioned, and I'll do it again, is that there are a lot of funding sources that help us pay for those costs. And included are, as I mentioned, utility budgets, reserves, and those sort of things, but also grants from other levels of government, and we reverse those a little bit as we between gas tax and other kinds of things, and specific projects, Commerce and others that we apply to. The gas tax has only been guaranteed up until 2010, not beyond that, but we do expect that funding source will continue and hopefully continue to grow. We work with other stakeholders, certainly in the Niagara region. We co-op with them on projects, even Niagara Parks with projects as well. We also work with other partners that help fund our projects, and Alderman Wing referenced the Y is a good example. We're working with girls soccer and the soccer facility. Even with the major developers on Section 37 programs. The Hilton that's being built right now, because of the bonusing issue with them and the Section 37 program, they've committed to allocating that Section 37 money towards our arena complex, and you remember that was part of our funding plan. So there's numerous ways that we can reduce our overall the impact on the levy. The next slide focuses a little bit more on the development charges because of the significance that development charges has on our projects. And of course, only projects that are anticipated through the development charges bylaw can be supported for these projects. And as you know, development charges assist with projects, everything from the public works issues to fire to parks and so on, so it's right across the board, really. If suddenly development slowed down or stopped, we have a significant problem in funding these projects. We probably wouldn't be able to fund a lot of the projects, or worst case scenario, we'd end up having to debenture a lot more money than we have been doing over the last several years. Debenturing on the next slide really is the last source for us. We do everything we can to put off debenturing, and that's why I mentioned earlier our practice for years has been only to debenture after the project is fully complete. We do our best to deal with our cash flows when we have them to help fund projects, to get through construction, and then we deal with it later. As you know, when we do debenture, we do it through the region. We put together a package each year, and they actually borrow the money for us. We do get a good rate. We're at 5.85% right now in terms of our costs. We've adjusted a little bit over the last little while in terms of debenturing. We always did debenture for 10 years, and now we're going to 20 years on some projects, just because obviously the life of those projects goes well beyond 10, in fact, in some cases well beyond 20 years. The next chart deals with the debentures that we're planning over the next several years. Based on the budget that you have in front of you here, and broken down according to the departments. And you can see, and as I kind of alluded to, 08, there's a small amount of debenturing to be done, but there's other debentures that sort of fall off, and that's why I mentioned that there's not an impact on your 08 budget with this capital budget in place. But to the comments of Alderman Peter Angelo earlier, we really need to have a good grip on what the implications of these projects are. And then look in 010 on debenturing. 010 is a significant year for lots of reasons, in addition to debenturing. But that's the year when you're really going to get hit based on this capital budget. Happens to be an election year as well. So there's huge impacts. If we go with all the projects that we have on the table right now, including the grade separation, matching funds with partnerships we have out there, and the other projects, and we don't get the revenues that we're looking for, we've got a large debt to pick up in 2010. So the idea of taking some time and really strategically looking at long-term, in this case, I think is an excellent idea. As I said, from a staff point of view, we're anxious to move on with the 08 projects. We really want to get them going. So we're hoping that minimally you will approve the 08 items to let us move forward on it. But as I mentioned from the summary sheet, we can go to the summary sheet and look at those 08 items. And if there are specific projects that you have a problem with in 08, this would be the time to let us know which projects you don't wish us to go with. The revenue sources, I've kind of alluded to already here. The two at the bottom, I'll just mention the Walker Industries. So even though we take on a lot of debt with the arena project, because of the support we will be getting from Walker Industries, that will end up paying off a large portion of the debt for the arena complex. So that's quite significant. And you'll recall, that's one of the main reasons we've been able to move from a 20 to a 4 pad, because of that kind of support. And the other thing is the operating improvements. We're able to project significantly reduced operating costs because of having the efficiencies of a 4-pad complex together. So all of those kind of things allow us to keep our costs down, therefore keep our venturing and ultimately the increase to the levy down. The next chart really is again, just a little more detail on that. The darker blue line gives you an idea of the annual debt servicing and how that begins to hit us as we get into 10 and 11. But the line below it really is a reflection of the support we get, the other funding sources we get to help offset those costs. So what happens, and we do have other charts not here tonight, and we'll get into it at another time, where we get into some real details of the implications year to year, and even we've done some projections on the implications of the levy each year. But if we are successful to get the non-tax funding debt, then really the incremental increases will be the gap in between those lines. So the higher the revenue we get, of course, the less cost there is to the taxpayer. So bottom line, though, is we're looking at a $78 million expenditure in 08 based on those projects that are listed in your budget. And as I mentioned several times, while it doesn't have an impact on the 08 budget, it clearly has an impact on the financial situation going forward, and so it is significant. We keep mentioning the 08 thing only because we're trying to make the distinction relative to the approval for the general purpose budget. That has been approved, and we're trying to make the distinction that in the capital budget. So we have a lot of detail in this binder, and hopefully people have had time to look at it. I appreciate the hesitation to want to approve the whole budget, and I would hope we could focus at least in on the 08 items, and a staff are here and can provide any detail you might need on those particular budgets and why they're on this list and what the implication is on the community.
Okay, I have Mayor Saucy that wishes to speak.
Well, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the CEO's recommendation, and it would be nice if we could deal with the 08 budget this evening, and I've asked the indulgence of council. We're after 9 o'clock already, and we still have a council meeting to conduct. I was hoping that your recommendation, Mr. Chairman, with respect to coming back at a later date to deal with beyond 08, 9 and beyond, might be approved this evening so that we could have a fair chance for everyone in council to debate and to discuss projects in a thorough manner. And hopefully this could take place on some Monday evening, an off-council night, that we might have a chance to spend several hours discussing just the capital budget. So I'm not sure if you'd entertain a motion at this time that we might proceed to work towards the 08 budget this evening, and then actually defer, if you wish, the balance of the capital budget to a meeting sometime later in March or early April.
So would you like to make that motion? Make that motion. Do I have a seconder for the motion of deferring the discussion on 09 and after to a future meeting? Seconded by Councilor Diodati. Is there any questions or comments to the motion? Councilor Wing.
I support the idea of having a special meeting to look at the amount of debt we're incurring in future and decide where exactly we're comfortable going, but I think in the meantime, sure, we've all spent a lot of time recently going through this, and there's things right now we know we'd like to take out, and I know in my case, there's certain things I'd like to move up. I think just to give staff some clear direction on where we're collectively heading, we should be dealing with this tonight, and then having the meeting you proposed at a future date.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments to the motion? Seeing none then, all those in favor? The motion is to defer the discussion for 09 and after to a future meeting. I'll call the motion again. All those in favor? Opposed? There's 4 opposed. Motion's carried. I'll vote in favor.
Motion's carried.
Motion's carried. You still have the floor, or are you finished? You finished? Councillor Iononi then, please.
Well, Mr. McDonald, in his prelude, said that there were things in this budget that we can't touch because it had already been, so look to the last 2 columns. But there's things in your capital budget where you're depending on potential future development charges that I have a problem with that are sitting in this budget. So in moving that discussion, is that we move all of it to later, or I can raise that now? Because I don't like the way this whole meeting's gone. Staff clearly knows that council doesn't like this budget. Council knows we don't like the budget. So the whole debate that we've prepared to have tonight, and we all did our homework, is no longer allowed, because now staff's going to come back and maybe bring back something we like, or something that's more manageable to us, without us giving full direction, because you've split it, so now we have to discuss it in isolation. I have to say, I think that the way that this was handled was very poorly done.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments, I guess, to the 08 operating budget? Councilor Carrier. To the 08 capital, I'm sorry.
One figure there, or one thing I'd like to have in front of me is the impact on the taxes and on the taxpayer if we approve this. So I don't see that in, and I didn't get that in your preliminary words, Mr. McDonald, on what impact if we just today went ahead and said yes to your want list or your wish list for 2008. What impact would that have on the taxpayers in 08?
You're not talking in 08, you're talking...
No, I'm talking, because obviously you're telling us it's going to impact them in the future. So I think we need to know, what impact that has in the future before we can approve that.
I think that's a very valid point, Councillor Carrier, and that's one thing that I continue to say, is that I think staff needs to update all of us on, the decisions that we make. Well, and I guess that's part of the discussion that we need to have tonight, is whether or not we do actually want to move forward with a motion to approve the 2008 capital budget. Or, we can always not approve the capital budget, and then staff can bring us projects as they see fit when they want them to move forward, or we can approve it at a later date. I know staff would not, wish for us to approve it at a later date, or wish for us to bring projects forward individually, but, ultimately, it's our decision. Yes.
I don't disagree with you, except that I don't know how I could support this until I know the impact.
I totally agree. Councillor Nunn.
I'd like to move deferral for the entire capital budget to our strategic planning meeting.
Okay. Would you also like to include in that we have a report come back with the 2008 budget, as Councillor Carrier was talking about? Because
sure, I have no problem adding that.
Okay. Mayor Salsi, second. Go ahead.
Excuse me. Why wouldn't you, if we got the budget escalating at the way it is going, why wouldn't we have an impact each year on what the capital budget would be, not just 208?
That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for. Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. Okay, then there is a motion to defer this discussion to the strategic planning session that council will have in the near future. Mr. McDonald.
We do have those projections, and we'd be happy to share with those, because we obviously are very concerned with that. What would be really helpful for staff is if there's any other specific data that you'd really like to have, when we meet with the strategic session and break them down. That's a really good point. If there's anything else that would be helpful to the council to make those decisions, we would really welcome those comments. And I know we're not going to debate on it, but just the general areas that
There is a motion on the floor to defer it to a strategic planning session. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is unanimous. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Wing is opposed. I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Not to go back on what we just discussed, but if you're asking what else I'd like to see, I guess I'd like to see the staff's priority list. So if this council comes back and suggests that we're not in favor of the impact on the taxpayers in the future, I guess not only from our perspective of what we'd like to see, but I guess I'd like to see from the staff perspective how they would prioritize. If we said to you, we're not going to go with 78 million, we're going to go with 48 million, I'd like to know from the senior staff level what their priorities would be, not just what our priorities would be.
Councilor Henon.
That point, Councilor Wing just had a good point. We have things we wanted to pull out of this budget. Again, we really made ourselves aware of today what we had a problem with and what we didn't. You guys are clear on that. There are traffic calming issues that I'd pull out of this budget. They don't sit in the 8 and 9 where Mr. McDonald said. So I'm not going to steer myself to the last two columns. There are things that maybe we passed in traffic calming. I'd take out a few $100,000 in traffic calming there and say that we should have learned our lesson with Woodbine. We are debenturing $172,000 in 08 to pay for traffic calming in Woodbine that stops 2 stop signs that are $10,000 cured. Drives me nuts to think that we're spending that money on something that didn't work. So when we say we're deferring this, can they continue on that path till we pass this? Because I'd say don't do anything new right now until we pass this.
Yeah, and I guess as Mr. McDonald had stated earlier, I think projects that are already underway, I'm not sure technically whether or not they can be stopped. So I'll defer to either Mr. McDonald or even Mr. Dulovic, actually, if they want to talk specifically about Woodbine.
If I could, while Mr. Dulovic is looking for that, I think, if projects are underway and going, we're going with them. What we will do, of course, is if there's any new projects, even if they've been approved, but if we haven't committed ourselves, we'll just bring those back to council. We respect that point that's being made, and we'll just have to come and look for approval project by project until we really get this thing sorted out. So.
Councilor Inoue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then so that Mr. McDonald clearly understands where I'm going, there are things underway that I would stop now. There are traffic calming issues that I would stop now. If we've only done the preliminary, park our staff there, do the paperwork, do not implement the actual calming islands, because that's where the money costs us, I'd stop now. When we talk about things that he tells us not to look at because we were already dealing with them, my biggest problems were under municipal works.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry, Councilor Inoue, just to answer your question, I believe that by not approving the capital budget, the 2008 capital budget, anything that's over $100,000, staff has to bring back to this council for approval anyway.
Okay, but the entire Woodbine project over a couple years cost us $172. So if you got a traffic calming issue, it's in the budget. There's a traffic calming issue that might cost us $98. And in the end, I mean, we're quickly learning that traffic calming isn't working. There's $98,000 I wouldn't want to spend. If we put 11 into it, and we know that the other 88 is useless to us because it's not working, stop the other 88. I don't want the argument, well, we spent... Do you understand the point where I'm going?
I understand exactly what you're saying.
And there are different ones through this budget, too. Under municipal works, page 50, Mr. McDonald says it's not something we can look at because they're already approved. But I have a problem with looking at things that say debenture $7.2 million in development charges, if available. We're counting our chickens before they're hatched. I want to stop anything that looks at us debenturing $7.2 million because it was started in 07 for money we may not get, and if we don't get, the taxpayers are in total hook for it.
I believe there's 2 large ones, 7.2.
There's a number of them. There's a number of them through municipal works that I would say stop now, but that would have gone to the debate we would have had tonight. So where do those things go if this debate is held over to our strategic planning meeting? Because in those, along with the 2.7 eligible for development charges under debenture, staff also has over $1 million from capital and sale of land, a business park and water main. Like, if those are not things we're looking at doing now, stop it.
Mr. McDonough.
I think we could respond to a couple of those. Maybe on the traffic calming, Carl can comment on that, and then maybe we can just ask for an update on the status of the Garner South Sewer area and what the status of that project is.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the traffic calming, there's really two pages, 108 and 109, that deal with traffic calming. One on 108, there's portions of it that have been completed already. However, that's not anything to do with construction or anything to do with going to the residents. We understood the viewer and safety audit is part of that category, and that's been completed. We've also addressed the fact that the traffic calming is still fixed, and we looked at other alternatives, and we bring that before that. That hasn't been completed. But have we gone to the residents yet to deal with it? No, we haven't in either case. So those portions of it would be done until we pass the budget.
Is that sufficient, Councilor Ioannoni?
Yes, it gives me a little bit more satisfaction. But when we talk about, okay, I'll wait till Mr. Dulick answers the Gardner Road.
Okay.
Through the chair, those projects are already under construction. They were approved by council a number of months ago, as this was in previous capital budgets. What these projects do is, in effect, what council decided to do was to open up these large areas of land for development, be it the Warren Woods projects, lands south of the Welland River. They needed servicing to proceed. They are eligible for development charges. What the issue is that there isn't, and finance may speak to this more, there isn't enough funds in the development charges right now to pay for it in a full shot. So what will happen is the money will be debentured. However, the debenturing costs will be paid through from development charges as development proceeds out there. As the development proceeds, the monies will be used to pay for those debenturing costs.
Councilor Ioannoni.
Okay, your report says if available. Your report doesn't say when available. It says if available. And you know what? You want to talk language. In the end, this council's going to have to turn to the taxpayers and say, well, we passed it. I know staff had the codicil in there, if available, but they meant when, but it never showed up. We're counting our money before we get it. And quite frankly, through you to Mr. Burden, this is the one topic you and I did have a discussion about in regards to this budget, and you weren't comfortable with it being put in here to venture before you had the money in the budget. So why are you comfortable with it now?
Through the chair, staff have long debated the whole issue of relying on debentures, and we realize that it does have a negative effect on the levy. We realize probably more seriously that it handcuffs the council in spending the tax dollars on existing programs, new programs, because you're saddled with debt. The issue that we have tonight is we needed to present this particular program, the fact that the construction has already started, the fact that we are already spending the money. The fact is, if we don't have development charges, we have to pay the bills anyways, and we have to debenture the proceeds. The good thing is that we are anticipating development. We are anticipating that developers will be paying development charges. And although we say if available, and we have to be honest, it is an if situation. There's no guarantee that the developers will build out there, that they will actually pay the development charges. This could be an investment that doesn't come to fruition in the early years. It may take much longer than what we expect. We realize that that is an if situation, but this is the best that we can present at this time.
Councilor Ioannoni.
How much have we spent out there to date? And in deferring this, how much do they have latitude to spend until we pass this capital budget? Can we stop anything at this point?
Through the chair, the Grassy Brook is near completion. The Garner Road is well underway. These came in separate reports to council previously. I mean, these projects were identified previously in previous capital budgets, and they did come. It talked about funding would come from development charges.
Was it just like this, under debenture? debenture and...
I'd have to go back and look at those reports and see what it says. But council did approve those projects. They were approved, and they did award those contracts.
Councilor Anoni?
Can you reply to council those two reports? And I'd love to know if we passed something that said you're going to debenture $16 million and you're getting the money back if available. Because I'm thinking one of us anti-debts would have caught that. So to me, again, it's always not what we are told, it's what we're not told. So I want to see in the original report where it says we were debenturing that money.
Perhaps we can have that come back.
The format hasn't changed, Mr. Chairman. For years and years, we list projects, we identify the funding sources. When we get the bids on the projects, we bring them back to council, and we share with council the funding sources. We've been consistently doing that for 20 years. So while I don't recall the exact details of the reports, I'd be pretty surprised if we didn't show funding sources for projects. So we'd be happy to bring them back.
Okay. Do I have any other comments, I guess, to staff in regards to the special meeting? Any direction that any councillor wants to give them? If not, then we'll go on to the next item, which is a report from our CAO, listed as 2008-01, Council's strategic priorities from 2007 to 2010.
This is a beautiful commercial.
Yes, I hope we don't have many people watching this meeting for the first time, and think there's never any good news. This report tonight actually is an information report. It's a response to Council's efforts recently to develop strategic priorities for the corporation. What staff have done is taken those strategic priorities. We've elaborated a little bit in terms of provided some clarification on those projects, and we've identified what activities have taken place and what projects we've done in support of those strategic priorities. So in essence, this is a bit of an annual report of the accomplishments of the council throughout 2007, and it shows that of each of the priorities that council has identified, there was actually fairly significant work done within the community. Unfortunately, we didn't have the attachment when you got the report initially, but the attachment we now have. But we think it's pretty significant. We think it's a process we should be doing on an annual basis to remind council and the public that work is being done and it is being directed through council's direction by identifying strategic issues. So it's an information report as an update from council.
So I have Councilor Diodati, Councilor Anoni, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions for staff in regard to the strategic priorities. One was, and the pages aren't numbered, so I just have to reference it under emerging business trends. But with reference to the GO Transit, my question is, why are we pursuing GO on weekends only as a weekend service? The whole thinking of, as I remember from this council, that we want to encourage people to want to reside here or maybe employed somewhere in the GTA, and weekend service will not do that. That's the idea of a weekend service isn't going to help someone that wants to relocate here that will work in the GTA. And I'm just wondering why we're pursuing weekend service only is my first question.
Okay. Mr.
If I could ask Mr. Felicetti to respond to that.
Sure.
Through the chair, it's actually an initial attempt. We have had discussions with GO about weekly service, but there are some technical issues with the rail. And the other issue is capacity. They're at full capacity dealing with GTA. In this particular case, it gets our foot in the door because they have inventory that's idle on weekends. So we can start that service Friday to Sundays, more from a tourism perspective to kind of initially get things going, and hopefully we create a relationship where we can extend it to weekly service. That's the intent.
Mayor Sossi?
And just to further qualify, we've had some discussion, as Mr. Felicetti has said, and recently we're trying to get trying to get GO Transit back to the city to further answer some questions that were presented to them. Last April, we met with Mr. McIsaac, who was heading up the GTTA, which will eventually take over GO service, and that should happen in the next little while. The GTTA will overview the entire transportation in the area. And we believe that in the next month or so, we expect to meet with GO Transit. They should come back to us with hopefully some positive news. We've asked for some questions with regard to trackage and access and the cost of the trackage in terms of getting trains here. So we're anticipating that we'll have some favorable response in terms of what they can offer and what may happen. I had a chance to talk to the Minister himself with respect to GO Transit, and the mandate to access Niagara would be requiring a change in a regulation, which he can do as a minister himself, as opposed to going to cabinet. So I think until they find a chance to rationalize the service and to see where their future is as well, we won't have that answer. But I believe that in the next couple of months, we should have a chance to get some further information from GO Transit.
How to do that?
Okay, well, that's great, because I see the GO service as something of an umbilical cord for Niagara to tap into the well-paying jobs in the GTA. So I'm glad to see the strategy to get a foot in the door. That makes sense. And the second question is under, the topic efficiencies of the organization, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, one thing I did not see mentioned in the report was our SRS, Service Request System, which was an initiative to track complaints or issues when they come to the city, that we can find out the progress of those issues. I know this was something that through our IT department we were implementing to help us, so we don't have to track issues and do our own follow-up. And I'm just wondering, I don't see that anywhere, and I know that's been in the works. Maybe we can get an update on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That'll be in the 2008 document, because seriously, we don't feel it's ready to unveil yet. We're almost there, and we're hopeful that actually probably in the coming month or so, we'll have a report to council on that. So that's really it. We're working out the bugs, and we're hoping to unveil it to you soon.
I'm guessing there must have been a lot of bugs in that program. We're getting closer though.
Through the chair, there was no technical bugs. In fact, I should, clarify that IT has done an excellent job of providing the actual technology. I think it behooves us, though, to present it so that once staff is comfortable with the technology, then we can unveil it to council. So until we got all of staff kind of getting used to using it, it didn't make any sense to sort of introduce it to council if none of the staff people were using it to its optimal capacity. And that'll be the end of my big words for tonight.
Councillor Iononi, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Call me a skeptic, but, this is a let's hold hands, sing kumbaya document to prop a $90 million debt-ridden capital budget. I mean, your timing's perfect. Don't think none of us saw through it, because we clearly saw what it was. But the question is, you have the rail grade separation environmental assessment report completed in November 2007, examined all the railroad crossings, the Stanford Green Rail Line, investigated. Anyway, it talks about the $11 million. Council approved moving ahead with the project at a cost of $11 million. Design work is scheduled for 2008, construction commencing in 2009. Well, when we attended AMO last year, I collected everything from all the booths, and one of the booths had a document that's called Rail Infrastructure Guidelines on Apportionment of Costs of Grade Separations. And it has the scenarios on which CN Rail and the city would be responsible. And as I go through, there's different scenarios. One looking, if a grade separation is to be constructed or an existing grade separation is to be reconstructed, the construction costs are normally apportioned as follows. On projects due primarily to road development, that would be 85% our responsibility, 15% railway company. But I think we fall in criteria 2, whereas on projects where both the road and the railway development have contributed largely to the need for the project. And let's be clear, the railway line going through Morrison Street largely contributes to the need for that overpass. And on that scenario, it has the municipality paying 50%, the railway company paying 50%. And not only then it goes on to tell you how to go after the monies, it also tells you how to appeal decisions when they turn us down. So I'd like to make a motion that staff investigate this scenario. I'll give this to staff. I'd like it back. But to have a report come back to us with our strategic plan to see, that cuts us down from 11 to 6. Or 11 to 5.5, which makes me far more comfortable on something that, we have an EA and staff telling us is necessary. So I'd like to move staff look into this and come back to council with a report.
Okay, I have a motion by Councillor Iononi, seconded by Councillor Diodati. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Councilor Thompson.
I'd like to hear from staff where we stand on this now.
Okay.
After all the debate we've had on it, is this a fait accompli? Are we,
No, it's not a fait accompli. The EA is not finalized yet. We'll be back to council to have discussions on that when it is finished. We have allocated some money in the 08, I think $100,000. But we and staff level assume there will be a lot more discussion here before we spend any money on that.
well, we've had deputations from people who are expressing their opinion. I didn't want to be moving too quickly ahead with this until we hear exactly what's going to... I think there are some other alternatives, and $11 million with what we're looking at in the capital budget, I'd rather build a new museum for $2 or $3 million and spending $11 million out there. I think there's some other alternatives that could be explored that could satisfy. In fact, the gentleman dropped off a plan for me the other day, which I didn't have time to prepare for tonight, but it has some other alternatives that may, don't know the costs involved, but I'd certainly like to have a look at them. I don't want to hear that we're moving ahead with this, regardless of what the situation is at this point.
There is a motion on the floor to refer the information that Councilor Ioannoni has over to staff and that a report come back to this council. Councilor Ioannoni.
Thank you. I thought I understood that we deferred any spending of the capital budget, including the railway line, to the strategic planning.
Sure.
I would think any of us would want to look to get a 5.5 or 50% inclusion from other levels of government so that we're not on the hook for $11 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. There is a motion on the floor to refer the information to staff and a report come back. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We are still on the Council Strategic Priorities. Councilor Ioannoni, you do still have the floor.
I'm good.
You're good? Councilor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. Just reading through all of this good information, I just was really pleased to see the Clean Yard bylaw has been updated and revised to become a more effective tool for enforcement of property and maintenance. How are we making out as a result of all the updating and improvement of the bylaw, which has done nothing for the people, the Terriacas out on Stanford Green Drive and the people down in the Glenview area who have been putting up with, for the last 20 years, of a disgusting mess down there on the industrial property. Where do we stand, and are we getting a report back on these things?
Through the chair, there will be a report. Staff have gone out to the Terriacas again. I think under on what that property owner has done out there, he meets the existing bylaw with the work that's been done.
What changes did you make to this upgrading and improving the bylaw?
Well, we used some of the bylaw to clean up some of the mess that he had before, so he's now meeting the new bylaw with what is out there, but there is going to be a report from staff on pictures showing what was there before and what is there now.
If that's what is permitted, we're sadly lacking in what we have with bylaws. We really should spend some time on this and see what other municipalities are doing and see what we can do to try to help people in this desperate situation where you have a neighbor who doesn't care what he has or puts on his property. Anyway, hopefully you're gonna have a report back.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Wayne.
Yes, thank you. On the first page, under key strategic priorities, the number one item is establish infrastructure investment priorities. So I was pretty happy when I saw that because I'm always mindful of some of the reports we've had come in over the past several years from staff and consultants. There was the one roads report that talked about a report of our roads being in poor condition, and we needed to invest now so that we didn't have to spend 4 or 5 times more later rebuilding them when they could be saved. And then there was the infrastructure management report that our own staff brought in a few years ago, saying this is how much you need to spend now on your roads, your water mains, your sewers. And I didn't see any of this addressed here. You know, we're still dumping raw sewage into our waterways, and this report was totally silent on addressing the very grave concerns that consultants and staff have both brought to us on our basic infrastructure. Why is this not in here? There's some sort of disconnect.
Okay, can I ask Mr. McDonald? Okay, Mr. Dulovic?
I think, some of the projects have been done, so we haven't identified. I mean, it's a continuing work that staff are doing as part of our ongoing works. We'll identify them in the future reports that will be coming to council on it, but just based on the information that was provided, and this is the summary of some of the highlights of that was done this year.
I guess what I'm looking for then is some sort of addressing of those two specific reports. The roads report from the consultant said, this is what you have to do now. I'd like to know how much of that we've done now, and the same with the infrastructure management report that was brought in a few years ago. I'd like to know how far we've gone along in terms of addressing those needs.
Would you like to make a motion that an update come back to council?
Sure, yes, that's my motion.
Seconded by Councillor Iannoni. Questions?
In time for the strategic meeting.
In time for the strategic meeting, exactly. Any questions to the comments that a report come back to council? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Do we have any other comments about the strategic priorities for council for 07 to 2010? If not, we're looking for a motion to receive for information. Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councillor Terrio. Any questions to the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Is there any other new business is there any new business for corporate services? Seeing none, we have a motion to adjourn by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Mays. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Members of council, I have a few announcements to make under the mayor's report this evening. First of all, I'd like to begin this evening by offering our condolences to Mr. Jim Maves, who's one of our transit bus drivers, on the loss of his stepfather, Mr. William Maves. Again, we're very sorry for his loss, and our thoughts are with the family at this time. I have a note of congratulations I'd like to pass on to Bill Clark, a longtime employee of the City of Niagara Falls. We all know Bill in his role as the City Zoning Administrator, and we thank Bill for his many years of service and his friendly, approachable style, and for being such a large part of the team at City Hall in Niagara Falls for the last 33 years. And we wish the best of luck to Bill in his retirement. And there's been some important events in our community recently I'd like to acknowledge as well. I was pleased to attend and bring greetings to the third annual Valentine's Day semi-formal held at St. Michael High School. This event is always a highlight for special needs students from around the city. I'd like to thank in particular Councillor Peter Angelo and the staff at St. Mike's for having the students and staff putting on this event again this year. The Bowl for Kids' Sake was a great success and took place on February 16th. I'd like to thank members of council, again staff, our Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee for being active participants and fundraisers for this event. The community counts on our support. It was good to see a good showing last weekend. As well, I'd like to commend the efforts of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and once again they organized an excellent event that will benefit children in our community throughout the year. I'd like to mention some current events that will be of interest to members of council and the community. This week is Doctor Appreciation Week. We are pleased to thank the good doctors of our city for their dedication and hard work throughout the entire year. I encourage residents to take some time to recognize the efforts of their doctors this week and to say thank you for the excellent care they provide to help improve the quality of life for our families. The Niagara Falls Civic Convention Center has announced their executive team, and we are very pleased to officially welcome Ms. Carrie Painter, the President and General Manager of the NCCC, as well as MHPM Project Managers Incorporated, the firm that will oversee the construction of the convention center. It is a great pleasure to see this project begin to take shape, and we look forward to hear about continued developments as well. The month of March marks the Epilepsy Awareness Month across Canada. There will be several events in our city and across the region. On March 12th, the Horseshoe Falls will be illuminated in lavender light to commemorate the month of events. Epilepsy Niagara offers counseling programs, support services, and education to our residents. Their aim is to improve the lives of people living with epilepsy, and we certainly offer them our support during their Awareness Month. I'd like to remind all of you that the 6th annual Strikeout Violence Bowling Tournament is being held this Saturday at 1:30 at Cataract Lanes. Our council passed a motion to support the event and to register 2 teams. We currently only have 4 interested bowlers from council. Friday, it was Friday at 1:30. We have only 4 interested bowlers from council. This time we need more support, so we'd like you to contact, if we may, Kathy Crabb in my office to confirm your attendance. Saturday marks as well the Niagara Entrepreneur of the Year Awards being held at the Sheridan Falls View. I always look forward to this evening to be able to pay tribute to the businessmen and women who work to sustain and grow successful businesses in our city and our region. Congratulations to this year's nominees. On March 2nd, the Niagara Falls Community Kitchen Fundraising Dinner will be held at St. Anne's Parish Hall at 5:30. I would also encourage residents and members of council to attend to show their support for this important service in our city. Tickets are $25 and can be purchased by calling Judy at 905-358-0245 or contacting our office. Throughout the upcoming March break, there will be an enhanced public skating series at the Niagara Falls Arenas in partnership with 105.1 The River. The fee has been reduced to $1.05 to skate, and residents are asked to bring a donation for Project Share. I'll be there on Saturday, March 15th at 12 noon to kick off March break skating at the Chippewa Arena. Times and locations where reduced fees will apply will be posted in the City of Niagara Falls website. With that, I'll conclude my remarks for this evening. Move on to the next order of business under communication. We have a request to proclaim the week February 25th to 29th as Doctor Appreciation Week in the City of Niagara Falls. Moved by Councilor Peter Enzo, second by Councilor Maves. Any further discussion? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Also, we have a request from Canadian Forces Recruiting requesting permission to fly a CF-18 Canadian fighter aircraft for the Niagara Falls 2008 Canada Day celebrations. Moved by Councilor Thompson, second by Councilor Peter Enzo. Any discussion? Having seen none, all those in favor? The motion is carried. And we have composition at Regional Council for information to the City Clerk regarding Council's previous position on composition at the region. Councilor Thompson?
Yes, I would, it looks like we're into a huge debate with the small municipalities and the large municipalities. We had a huge discussion on this in the past. Everybody has a copy of the resolution that was sent before. I don't anticipate any change personally, but I would make a motion that we send it on to the region and encourage them at least to have a debate about a system that's been in place for 40 years and is badly in need of change. And when you take the 2 largest municipalities, Niagara Falls and St. Catharines, who pay the bulk of the regional budget and yet have a small representation in comparison with our participation. So hopefully they will have a discussion and debate, and hopefully there will be some streamlining and updating and improvements. So I make that motion.
Motion by Councilor Thompson. Yes, Councilor Carrier. Second it.
Second the motion, Your Worship. I guess my question would be, I noticed that there are a couple of things that were discussed. Has there ever been any discussion at the Chamber about representation by financial contribution?
Not that I know of, no.
So, like any other corporation, what do we pay? What do we pay, 23%, 24%? What is our contribution?
23, I believe. Yes.
And what is our representation?
4 out of 30.
Yeah.
What is that? What percentage would that be?
Yeah, 31 total.
15%.
So,
4 out of 30 or 31? Yes.
My suggestion would be, Your Worship, that there should be some talk about representation by contribution, as we pay 23-24% of the finances. We should have at least 23% of the say, like any other corporation. It seems ludicrous that we would pay that percentage and have half as much representation as we have financial contribution.
Councilor Carey, I appreciate your approach. We have something called the triple majority as well. The clerk might want to elaborate on that. It's a very complicated matter, but requires consent on a number of levels. and it just doesn't either by population or by contribution, as you're suggesting here. So, Mr. Clerk, do you want to offer any input with respect to that?
Well, through the chair, that traditionally there has to be a triple majority for some of these big changes to take place, the structural changes. Now, of course, His Worship, Mr. McMullen, has talked about calling in the province to look at the situation, so, who knows where that might lead. But having said that, usually there's a triple majority process where the majority of regional councillors have to approve something, the majority of the lower-tier municipalities have to approve it, and that approval by the lower-tier municipalities must make up the majority of the population of the region. Therefore, the smaller municipalities can't gang up on the larger one.
But I guess then my comment would be, we're never going to get a change. We're never going to get a change if a few of the small municipalities have to vote in favor of a change. It seems like the only possibility of a true reform would be to call the province in. Because, if I was paying 3% and had a 10% representation, I'd never vote to change that either.
Yes, Councillor Wayne?
I just had some clarification on the motion. Does it include this representation by financial contribution? Because I think it should. I think it's a great idea.
Well, you have one presentation here that reflects on this report that the clerk has supplied to us, and there's a request on the floor to send information on to the region.
Yeah, I would move that we had it.
Okay. Wish? All right. Any other comments? Having seen none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional items for Council's consideration?
Yes, Your Worship. There's two other proclamations that are in your handouts this evening. Fresh Air Fund requesting March 20th be proclaimed, and Epilepsy Niagara requesting that the month of March be proclaimed as Epilepsy Awareness Month.
Okay, can we take those together? Yes, Councilor Peter Enzo, moved by Councilor Peter, second by Councilor Mays. Any discussion to those at all? Having seen none, all those in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Move on to reports, ratification of community services. Calling the chair, Councillor Iononi.
Thank you. The ratification of Community Services Committee of February 25th. The following items will be ratified from tonight's meeting of the Community Services Committee. A, the minutes of February 11th, 2008 be approved as amended. 2, TS 2008-07 Forward Avenue Traffic Operation Review, that the following report be received for the information of council. B, TS 2008-08 Garner Road between Mountain Road and Warner Road speed limit review, that the existing 80-kilometer speed limit on Gardner Road between Mountain Road and a point 350 meters south of Warner Road be reduced to 60 kilometers. TS 2008-16 Royal Manor Drive at Windsor Crescent intersection control review. 1, that a stop sign be installed at the intersection of Manor Drive at Windsor Crescent, east intersection facing northbound motorists. 2, that the Niagara Regional Police Department provide enforcement of the 50-kilometer speed limit on Royal Manor Drive when resources permit. And 3, that staff undertake follow-up speed studies in 6 months to determine the effectiveness of police enforcement. And I so move and want to make record that I got us out of there on time and 50 minutes early.
Okay, we have motion by Councilor Iononi, second by Councilor Diodati. Any discussion? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. I'm going to call on the clerk to bring forward the ratification of corporate service as well, please. Clerk?
Hey, hopefully I got this accurately. It was so long ago. Approximately half a dozen or more items. Number 1, that Report F 2008-10, the 2008 municipal utility budget be approved pending possible amendments after council receives the Loudon report. Item 2, F 2008-11, that the 2008 general purposes budget be approved. 3, TS 2008-15, that the proposed adjustment to the parking fines be approved. 4, that the proposed expansion to the Lundy's Lane Historical Museum be referred to the 5-year capital budget for consideration. 5, actually, there were 2 deferral motions that really can be combined now, and that's that the 5-year capital budget discussions be deferred to a future strategic planning meeting. 6, that staff investigate and report back on possible funding opportunities for grade separation for the future strategic planning session.
And finally, that an update on the consultants' road and infrastructure reports be provided for the future strategic planning section.
Okay. Motion to approve by Councilor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councilor Diodati. Any discussion? Oh, you're opposed to? Okay, thank you. So noted. Following that, we'll call the balance of the vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, ratification of camera recommendations, please.
One item from in camera, and it's a recommendation regarding the development charges appeal that council direct legal counsel to continue to proceed with the OMB hearing date scheduled for May 5th and continue to have discussions with the appellants.
Thank you. Motion to approve the same. Moved by Councilor Maves and seconded by Councilor Diodati. Any discussion? We had no conflicts. We note that. Okay. So those in conflict won't be voting. All those others in favor? Any opposed? One is opposed. Motion is carried. Thank you. Move on to the consent agenda. Members of council, are there any items you wish to remove? Yes, Councilor Diodati and Councilor Wayne.
Yes, Your Worship, item TS 2008-17, please.
All right, okay, we're with that. Councilor Wayne, same thing. Okay, would you like to deal with that first? Councilor Diodati? We have some additional correspondence as well. A note from the principal, Ms. Davey, and also from Mr. and Mrs. Ryan and Jody Diodati. We can look that as well. You wish to look 2008-18? Okay, thank you. Let's proceed with 2008-17. Councilor Diodati?
Yes, Your Worship. In regard to the request letter that we received for a flashing amber light at Merriward School on Dorchester, it's obvious with some reading into it that it's a congested area with high traffic, with high speeds, and a high enrollment. And these are obvious ingredients for a very dangerous outcome. They've already had some very close calls. There's no question safety is the issue at hand here. And I wouldn't want to see a fatality. The warning signs are obvious. And I would move, Your Worship, that this council request that staff at the earliest convenience put in a flashing amber light at the crosswalk of the school.
Moved by Councilor Diodati, seconded by Councilor Wing. Any discussion of the motion? Yes, Councilor Maves?
Yeah, I travel that road quite frequently. It does get quite congested, and it is dangerous, and I would support that motion.
Sure. I can appreciate the concern of the residents and the principal as well, so I can appreciate your concern. Let's call the vote. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Move on to 2008-18, supply of 4 city buses. That was brought forward by Councilor Maves. Yes.
No, I'm just curious. I thought we had it. We're going to buy 2 buses per year, and I see there's 4 on this.
Let's see if we can...
4 city buses.
All right. Mr. Grant?
2 buses per year program last year. So this is in addition to, this is a replacement of 3 buses that we anticipated, plus the addition of 1 additional new bus. All of these buses, what they're faced with right now is that our buses are not fully accessible, and that these buses will get us to our target of 2011, some fully accessible in the city of buses.
Does this replace some of those smaller buses that we had? Are those obsolete now? Or?
What's happening right now is there's a strategic business plan taking place, and we'll review all of those. The intent is not to replace the smaller buses. This is actually replacing larger buses with 35-foot buses versus 40-foot buses.
I understand, though, too, that the bigger buses do take the pounding of the roads and last much longer than the small buses. I recall when I was with the transit, that was always the rub against buying smaller buses. But I'm a little confused, though, in that it's an awful big expenditure, like $1.6 million, roughly. And was this approved from council prior to that?
Yes, Mr. Grant, you want to address that?
Is this in the 209 budget or 208 budget?
This is in the 208 capital budget. What this is because of the lead time on purchasing buses of 10 months, we're bringing this to council now to start the process. And basically the majority of the funding is going to be coming from the gas tax.
Right.
So there's only a small portion that's coming from Fast and Furious.
Have they been ordered, these buses, or is this just a
No,
recommendation?
this is a recommendation that we got on tender for RFP. This is what the RFP has been submitted, and this is a request of approval to go ahead and purchase these buses.
Can I ask, the gas tax, will that cover the majority of this, or a big portion?
Yeah, it's outlined in the report.
Just the bottom line, 1.26 million is covered by the gas tax, 284,000 is done by debenture.
Sounds like a bargain.
And, Mr. Grant, you might want to qualify, is it mandatory that we spend that provincial gas tax on equipment?
Yes, the majority is on equipment or infrastructure.
Okay, all right.
Excuse me, your worship, I believe too, at one point, when I was with transit, they said that a lot of the money had to be spent on trying to attract new ridership and advertising it. Was that done by the boards? Has that changed?
Mr. Grant?
With respect to the gas tax?
Yes. It was, a lot of it was supposed to be spent on promotion. And as far as I was concerned, that was a waste of money anyway, because you're not going to attract a family that has 2 or 3 cars to ride the bus. But anyway, just wondering if that rule was still in there, if they changed that.
With respect to the gas tax, it's really the infrastructure, and it's really up to the municipality on how to spend it on the bus.
Right, thank you.
Okay. So, Councilor May, do you want to move that as well?
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, seconder to that? Councilor Carrier? Deal with that. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Now, are there any other items you wish to lift? Yes, Councilor Ioannoni?
I just have a question. MW 2008-13, Sophia Memory Taylor Road Reconstruction Project, Belcan. Water main and sanitary infrastructure. Page 2 of that, it says, the city introduced a consulting agreement with Phillips Engineering for provision and inspection services of the Grassy Brook West water main and sanitary sewer. Is that the area that I was talking about earlier? Okay. So it says, just to my point, due to the excessive depth of the sanitary sewer being constructed in adverse soil and unexpected delays caused by third-party sources such as left lane construction and pole relocation, it became evident that work schedule needed to be extended to complete the sewer construction. And under its funding source, it says entirely funding through development charges. Is this the if applicable or if available?
Mr. Dillwick?
Because I was just told that was in our report, and it's not in this one. So if this is the same report, is this the if available or we will venture?
Okay. Mr. Burden or Mr. Holman? Who would be?
No, I'll take it.
Okay.
Your Worship, as I indicated earlier, when we were developing the capital budget, there were several debates between municipal works and finance staff as to how properly to present the funding for these projects. In years past, the traditional method of showing these projects funding would be from development charges. When we reviewed the actual amount of available development charges in terms of cash on hand, we realized that these projects would not be able to be funded from actual cash, but they would have to be funded from future development charge flows. So we elected to show the fact that these projects, although they are somewhat already done, and already we are paying for them, when we take the development charges money in the future, that money will be used to pay for the debt that we are incurring today. And although this report actually says from development charges, which is true in a sense, the actual funding formula is debenture first, development charge second.
Mr. Burden, I am very clear in our conversation where you said you had a problem with counting our money before we had it. And my point here is Mr. Dulovic earlier said that the reports we pass say development charges if available. That is not what this report says. So we're basically using money that we don't have, hoping that we get it once development is built. Correct?
Who's your question posed to?
To Mr. Dulovic, because he said we had that in our reports, and that's not what this report states.
Mr. Dulovic?
Your Worship, no, I didn't. I said I couldn't recall and would have to get the reports.
Well, now you have one.
I didn't say that at the time. I'd have to look at those reports to see what it said at the time, but I did not say that those reports made that statement.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm clearly getting two statements. One on a telephone from staff who says, I'm not comfortable giving you a capital budget that has, if available, we shouldn't be looking at that much, debentering that money unless we're sure it's coming in. And here I get a different story. So, you wonder why I'm confused and voting for a budget.
The Councilor, I note that the funding source shows development charges at 57% and capital holding at 43%.
That's not the point of
Okay.
this. We need that.
Okay. So, all right, any other questions? Having seen none, we'll move with the balance of the consent agenda. Moved by Councilor Peter Angelo, second by Councilor Maves. Call the vote. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional bylaws for Council's consideration or amendments to the bylaws?
Just to clarify, there was an amendment to the bylaw 2008-31. Mr. Burden outlined it earlier during his presentation, but I just want to draw it to your attention as well, and it was given to you as a handout.
Okay, I note that. Thank you. So at this point, we'll include that as well. Can I have a motion to use the bylaws? Bylaws are given a first reading. Moved by Councilor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councilor Diodati. Once again, Council's heard the motion. Any questions or comments? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Bylaws 2008-29 sorry? 31, okay. Bylaws 2008-29 to 2008-32, read a first time.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to give the bylaws a second and third reading? Moved by Councilor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councilor Diodati. Once again, Council's heard the motion. Any comments or questions? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Bylaws 2008-29 to 2008-32, read a second and third time and passed.
Thank you. Any new business at all this evening, members? Councilor Thompson?
Yes, I wonder if we could have a comment where we stand on two matters. Both of them have to do with art. Several weeks ago, I brought up about the portrait collection with the federal government. Has there been any contact or anything with respect to that matter? Information, either we're on the list, we're not on the list, we're in the running, we're not in the running. Has anybody made any contact with our federal member?
Mr. Yuka?
Through your worship, I can't say we're on the list. As you probably read in the paper, we did send the matter to Mr. Nicholson, our MP. He did have some discussions with the Minister of Culture and Heritage. However, the actual RFP process has gone through Public Works Canada. I have personally emailed the gentleman in charge for some clarification and have not heard back from him. I've also called his office, and I'd like to come back with some sort of report to council on that, but I just haven't received the information I was hoping for.
Good. I appreciate that. Thank you. The other one is with respect to Dr. Frutka and trying to get the meeting together with respect to trying to get some kind of an agreement. Where does that stand? I haven't had any calls about meetings yet.
Yes. I'm not sure if Ms. Morrissey can address that. Have you had a chance to contact Dr. Frutka yet?
Through the chair, I wasn't at the last council meeting, but I was advised of the councilor's request. We're putting the background file together, and through the Arts and Culture Committee, we have been working on an updating of art public policy, which would address acquisitions in terms of their appraisal value at the start. But we'll pull the files dating back to, I think, almost 2000 on this, on the previous approaches that were taken with the collection for follow-up.
No, that really upsets me when I hear that red tape BS going on here. Why wouldn't we be getting in touch with them, setting up a meeting? I've been asking for this for long before I brought it up at the council. I brought it up at the council in frustration, and I'm bringing it up again now because I had John Jupian, who is well known in this community, who is not well, but took the trouble to phone me, and he has the expertise and the ability. In fact, he was responsible for the complete renovations of the Frelick Tavern, or Battlefield House, but said he would be very pleased to be involved in assessing the Frutka collection and give us any assistance that he could with respect to that. I also had Mr. Peter Meyer, who has the Krieghoff Gallery and Cafe, and was interested in starting a Rodin Museum in this city, and we worked with him for years, also contacted me and said he would also like to be involved in trying to assist because they recognize that the collection is very important to the city. And here we are not reacting. I think that's sad, and I hope that we're going to have some results very quickly with respect to the matter. And Mr. McDonald's been away. I know that he hasn't been around, but I think that, as I tried to impress upon everybody before, this is really crucial to at least have some movement and see if we can move on with this to take advantage of a great opportunity, which would be a great catalyst for the downtown.
Hopefully we can have a response in the next couple of weeks. I appreciate your frustration. Thank you. Any other comments on the new business? Having seen none, motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Ioannoni, second by Councilor Mays. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.